Hello, and welcome to the Humanity, where we do the things with the stuff for the people. I am Matt. You're the people.
Ooh. And I'm Tommy, huh? Threw a curve in there. I am the people. And so are you, Matt. Don't forget about you. You're
Yeah,
the
I
people.
also be a people.
You be a people quite good. Um, so yeah, well, tonight we're talking about spirituality, and are we spiritual, or what does that even mean? Kinds of things, and how does that relate to other things, perhaps?
And maybe the stuff.
Mm, that too. Can't forget the stuff. I was always a big fan of the double stuff myself.
Oh yeah. Um,
Triple stuff just seemed like way too
no, nope. Just makes me think of fat people. No, for real, it did. I know that might be mean, but like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's all right. We're you can allow yourself to be mean every
And
now
I
and
know
then.
I don't like to eat fat people, so
See, that's good. That's good.
that's why I was unappetizing.
Yeah. So speaking of cannibalism, the topic of Christianity may come up
Fried
tonight.
green tomatoes. Oh, cannibalism too.
Yeah.
Fried green tomatoes. The movie. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Yeah, they barbecued a dude.
No.
Yeah, and then this racist came to town and they fed him the dude because he like demanded to have barbecue, and like they're like, no, we don't have any barbecue, and then and he's like, what's that? It smells good, and then like, and it was because they were disposing of the body. They were like cooking it to get rid of it, and to like just yeah.
Cool.
And so yeah, and he was like, this is good. And then and then it was a black guy who was the cook, and he was like kind of horrified, but also he had this look on his face like, this is what you get, motherfucker.
Uh, all right. So, what you drinking tonight?
Voodoo Ranger Juice Force
Ooh.
IPA. It's a hazy IPA. Here, hazy Imperial.
Ooh.
And then for a treat, because I worked late and extra hard today, Tropical Mix Jelly Belly, which I thought would pair well with the juicy IPA.
Oh yeah. Is it, or have you tried them both together?
I don't
so
know.
far?
I haven't tried the beer yet.
Ah, well. So
I mean, I've had
we'll all
before,
learn.
just not with that.
Yeah, we'll all learn together. Um, yeah, so I'm having a repeat of a couple weeks ago, I guess. Finally finishing off that Sierra Nevada torpedo pack with the dank
Back to the
IPA.
dank.
Yep. I figure, tonight, with the we're talking spirituality, might as well get a little dank.
Dank is a good dog name.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Also, I'll be continuing the theme of my second beer, but I'll get to that later. So stay tuned.
Holy shit, this beer is juicy.
Ooh.
It smells like orange and pineapple juice. It's some crazy hops. Or it doesn't actually have juice in it. Better not fucking put juice in my beer. Oh, with natural flavors. Fuck off.
Were you looking at the can?
Yeah, if you can't get hops to dance for you that way, then look, you're not good enough. Don't try to do it. Like
yeah. Or if you're gonna add something, at least add like actual juice, so it's like real stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But even like go easy, not like that beer I had at Mad Tree over the weekend that like just tasted like juice with like a slight hop infusion. But
yeah, they must have used flavors in that too.
Yeah, I don't know, but from my point of view, when you were like looking at the can to see what was in it, like we couldn't see the can, and I couldn't even necessarily see much of your arm, so it looked like you were just like giving a weird look to just something off camera, like better not have juice in or whatever. Like,
oh yeah, looking over my glasses so I can read because I need bifocals.
Uh, I thought it was like one of your kids was like bringing you a drink or something. You're like, that better not have juice in it.
Yeah, looking over your glasses and somebody is giving people the Chuck Schumer eye.
Ooh,
Have you seen that? Every time he goes out in public and tries, and even lately when he tries to rally
Mhm.
the troops, he looks over his glasses to like, or puts them way down his nose so he can read stuff, and he
Yep,
reads his
that's a
notes. You're like,
that's a vibe.
oh my god, just is there a farm where we can send him?
Yeah, him
Put him
and
out to pasture.
I can't think of his real name. I can only remember back years ago when Jon Stewart on the Daily Show referred to him as Droopy the Senator.
Oh, that is Mitch
You
McConnell.
know, yeah, I love how you know who I'm talking about. Yes, Mitch
Yep,
McConnell.
where like his whole face is either like slowly growing out of his shirt collar or getting sucked into it. Like,
And also kind of looks like a turtle.
well, completely.
But
Now
yeah,
it's even funnier now that he's old and has some kind of brain damage. I mean, that's
yeah,
not funny, but like
right.
he's talking even slower, and so it's like, oh, turtle man.
Yeah, see, brain damage itself isn't funny, but it can make other things funny.
He
Is
did
that?
fall down the stairs
I don't know.
recently. I
That
mean,
sucks.
that's especially in the Capitol. You know, those fuckers are
Yeah.
made out of marble and shit. Like,
Hmm.
there's
Yeah. That's not a regular everyday falling down the stairs kind of
no,
thing. Yeah.
like, they shouldn't let him
So
use the stairs. Like, why was he on the stairs? Take care of your
yeah.
old people.
Right. Yeah. My heart goes out to him, like in the genuine way, not the problematic salute kind of way.
I like
Um,
somebody did.
yeah.
Somebody went like, I forget who I was watching today, but they gave the finger when they flipped it. They're like, my heart goes out to you.
That's great. That's great.
And then they're like, and he's like, that's a Roman finger.
A Roman thing.
It's a Roman finger.
That's beautiful. I love that. But yeah. Uh, Oh, a couple of things before we get into the first drink, even though we're obviously on our first drink. But at least for me, a bit of kind of news. Um,
I love kind of news.
yeah. Well, I've already shared this with you, but I'll
Oh,
share it with the other people. So, in my most
then
recent.
shut up.
All right. Well, good night, folks. uh, that tickled me so. Um, but yeah, so in my most recent session with my therapist last week, um, so I say just a therapist, meaning like she's not like a psychologist or anything that can make any like official like
Yes,
diagnosis of anything I have. But
diagnosis.
but it seems like we've been talking about things I have that are like definitely like symptoms of like various neurodivergences that she can't necessarily say I do or don't have. But it seemed like, especially in this last section, she was like very much like, now I can't say, but it really seems like you're autistic, in a very professional therapist can't officially say kind of way. Either that or I completely misread her. So I figured either way, pretty strong confirmation.
Yeah.
So,
It's like
so
either she wasn't saying that and I didn't understand because I'm autistic, or I
yes.
did understand her and I'm still autistic.
Yeah, she said something about like, I mean, we could pull out like, the book of like different diagnoses that they would use, and it's like you're
Yeah, the
ticking the
DSM
boxes.
5.
Yeah, but yeah, she's like, we could pull it out and look through the list, and it's like you're ticking the boxes. And I'm like, because we were talking about like whether or not I would want to actually pursue getting a diagnosis, like what benefit would it be, also like just how expensive it is, and would it be worth it, kind of thing. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I guess I'm at the point where I'm comfortable just saying, yeah, I'm autistic.
Well, cool. Welcome. I'm also
Yeah,
self-diagnosed.
well, good.
I could get diagnosed,
Oh,
but my therapist found somebody that takes my insurance. Um,
oh, cool.
so Yeah, that'd be neat.
Yeah.
For me, it would just be like useful because I think family still kind of like is like, oh, maybe, probably, but like isn't won't take my word for it or their own
Yeah.
experiences with me.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like it's one of those things. Like I honestly don't know. Like with my family, like if it would be a good or bad thing to find out. But yeah, I don't know. But
My experience with conservative types, like with their old small group, was they don't understand why. They're like, okay, cool. It doesn't really matter to me, and then which means I don't really get how their perception of things you do could change now.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's
But
times
yeah.
where you thought I was being a dick. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I just didn't know I was coming off like a dick.
Right. Yeah. 'Cause for me, like I almost wonder if it'd be more helpful, like to, instead of just saying like I'm autistic, but maybe just say like in certain circumstances, more specifically what my issue. Like, oh, in this situation, like I'm just not feeling I can confidently read anyone's social cues right now, or I'm
Yeah,
just getting very overwhelmed by this situation in these particular ways, or oh, like me like avoiding doing this thing is not because I'm like being lazy or I don't want to do it or I don't care that you want it done. It's just like I have this is something my therapist did specifically say that probably have is a pathological demand avoidance.
which was clearly made up by somebody who was pissed off at autistic people. Does this sound like somebody who was like, "Fucker won't do what I tell him to"? Yeah, you got that pathologic demand avoidance, don't you? Like pathological doesn't sound it. It doesn't sound like a medical description of something. It sounds a little judgy.
Right, right, yeah. So, but yeah, but
Or
then I
a
want to like
pathological demand for autonomy, or pathological need for autonomy. That was something, or pervasive demand for autonomy. Something like that, where like
yeah.
not feeling like you don't have autonomy, especially over your thoughts or your physical person, um,
Hmm.
triggers fight or flight, and yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just like my brain. If it thinks it has lost autonomy, everybody else can fuck off. Like this. um,
Hmm. Oh yeah, and because she also said it sounded like I have like some sort of like sensory processing like disorder or issues or whatever. So it was, but it was kind of cool of her like to say in like a very like affirming way. Is essentially saying like a lot of things that like dealing with in life are just harder for you. And it's like because you're having to deal with all this extra stuff on top of just the thing.
yeah,
So
it's
that
like
was
playing a game for the first time on expert setting or something,
yeah, like the
or hardcore setting.
yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, just going through life, didn't realizing I had it set on hard mode or whatever. It's like man, but I've been killing it. And speaking of which, another thing I mentioned. Was talking about getting close to finishing the DLC for Elden Ring, and I was talking with Matt about this over the weekend about that final boss. Remember that I was talking about, where I was
Mhm.
like, I don't even know if it's worth it to beat this dude because, like, even like in a lot of the community around this game, there's this big discussion. They're like, did they go too far with this boss? Like, is he actually just unfair? Um,
Life is unfair, bitch. Suck it up.
yeah. So, but long story short, I did finally beat him a couple days ago. Um, Mostly because like I did some more like looking up on the boss, and part of it like in the DLC there's different things because just the DLC area like in general it like everything is just like harder than the base game, but there's some things you can pick up throughout the DLC to like make your character stronger to kind of compensate. But it's that whole thing of well you got to find the things, and one of the and I was also talking with Matt about how convoluted and confusing the DLC is, but maybe I'll get into more of that later. That feels more like a second drink topic kind of thing. So I don't want to.
What's happening on your shirt? What does it say?
Oh,
Oh, are
since
you wearing a hoodie? Okay,
yeah, I'm
that's
wearing a
what
hoodie over it.
I
Yeah,
was like.
that's just the same color.
Say period INC. What's going on here?
Yeah, yeah, it's ink, but like the abbreviation, but the period's on the wrong side. No, um, yeah, yeah. See, yeah. it's the black on black look, which yeah. So
You should get a black backdrop so you just look like a floating head.
that says ink.
Yeah. So what's the topic for tonight?
All right. So well, I guess maybe start by posing it in question form. So Matt, like, do you consider yourself spiritual? Like, what does that term mean to you? Maybe just start it off that way.
No. But the reason why I hesitated is because like other people probably would. But
Yep.
if they mean something supernatural, no. I mean, maybe something paranormal that's like normal, just like not normal we're used to. Like it could even it could be scientific, but maybe the only way a human brain can really experience it is that like it's a spiritual feeling or that kind of experience. No, I would say there's a. I asked ChatGPT earlier, and I said, "What's another word for spiritual?" But it's based in science, and it's like you might like numinous, which describes a profound, awe-inspiring experience without requiring supernatural beliefs. And I was like, "I've never heard of that word. I kind of like it now."
Yeah, I've heard the word. Yeah, I had no idea what it meant, but yeah, I've heard it.
Like mystical naturalism, meaning that nature can feel mystical sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's actually like for people who know, like I haven't really been using it much, but like about 2 years ago now, I started like a second like profile like on Facebook and Instagram. That was supposed to be more for my, atheistic, counter apologetic, like basically just like my thoughts on like religion and Christianity and why I'm at where I'm at. Because I guess like some people who like were following me on the Facebook particularly like weren't as much of a fan of those kind of posts. Or like, oh, maybe I'll just kind of. But the people are still wanting to follow me for like just other things I do or updates on the kids or things like that. Or especially like back when I was still going through the whole like cancer thing. So I've heard of other people doing this where they just like start a second page like for that kind of thing. And like I said, I don't really use it as much anymore because it ended up bleeding over. Because like part of the reason I wanted to start it was like to have more conversations, but I found like most of the people who were following it and actually were interacting with it were people who pretty much already agreed with what I was saying. Was like, no, I want people who disagree with me to see this, so it can like be like talked about and like not like argued or debated, but like have like discussion going back and forth. Like, what do you think of this? Like, does this make sense to you? I wanted to hear from people who are still believers on what I was thinking about it. So anyway, so I called the page "The Lesser Miracle." Mm-hmm. It was kind of a take on David Hume, philosopher. He had this thing like he was a naturalist, so he had this. There's a quote from him. I don't remember the full thing or the exact quote, but there was at least a phrase in it that I thought was interesting. But he said when he's looking at possible explanations for something, and he's like, some explanations maybe seem more miraculous, some less miraculous or more naturalistic or whatever. He says, like, the phrase he used was always I reject the greater miracle. So basically if some explanation like requires like some sort more of a miracle, but like we have another explanation that doesn't, then he accepts that. So I just thought the phrase, the greater miracle was interesting. So in that like it almost implies like there's a lesser miracle. Mm-hmm. So I called the page The Lesser Miracle, partially because a lot of it had to do with, me not just going on this journey of leaving faith and into atheism, but just how, my recovery from very serious stage 4 cancer was kind of a catalyst for that, and how a lot of people view that as like a very like miraculous healing or recovery or whatever you want to call it. And I was just like, okay, yeah, like you said, like things in this life still, even if they are like very naturalistic, like they still can seem very miraculous. So I'm just like, all right, well, this is like the explanation of my healing is like, oh, it was just the miracle of modern medical science, which that is.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you can still, that still seems miraculous, to use the word, but yeah, it's yeah. So that's that tangent. I think that, like,
Yep.
yeah, brackets slash tangent bracket in HTML language.
So I feel like I should
Nerd.
explain why I thought other people would think I'm spiritual.
Oh yeah.
It's like because I meditate and I've had a near death experience that like I don't know how I survived. Like so I was T-boned on the highway on the highway by a semi.
Yeah. Now, when you say near death experience, you mean like you actually had like the kind of like out of body experience that a lot of people talk about, or you mean you just literally almost died?
I mean, like I should have died
Right.
because I got T-boned by the semi
Hmm.
on the highway, and
Yeah.
so like anything like 40 miles an hour and up, like should have killed me.
Yeah. I
uh,
only ask that because most of the time when people use the phrase near death experience, they're talking about the whole like where I was like on the operating table and I like floated out of
well,
my body and I saw a shoe on the roof and
so I
kind of
came
stuff.
to the right. That was not a scientific.
Yeah, we can get. Well, I kind of want to get more into that later too, but yeah.
So the more I thought about it recently, so I remember waking up in the helicopter, and I had been like trying to remember um, how that felt,
Hmm.
and I had a feeling. So I had this like awareness that I had been somewhere else, but all I remember is black.
Mm.
uh, yeah. So I don't know. I'm having a lot of similar symptoms to people who have had near death experiences,
Mm.
like the impact it had on me and the problems I had later. um,
Mm.
so I don't know. Uh, so I don't know what to call it when like physics says you should have died but you didn't. Um,
Yeah.
and even like so the helicopter people that came and picked me up thought I was for sure going to die any second, and so that's why they called air care and to take me to UC hospital because I was in southern northern Kentucky,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
like everybody seemed really impressed that I wasn't more hurt. Like that was
Mm.
in general the feeling I was getting from like every doctor I saw for a checkup. They're like, "Huh, you're fine." Like shouldn't be fine. This is
Yeah.
weird. I'm uncomfortable. That was like how every doctor was, including the chiropractor. My mom drove me there because I had lost my license temporarily, which makes sense because I was a DUI on a highway and DUI
Yeah.
accident. Um, and I went for one chiropractor visit, and then I went back for the second one, and he was like, he healed really quickly. He was kind of
Hmm.
freaked out by it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know what to make of that. Like,
Yeah. I had a lot of like very similar things, like briefly. It was like through my whole like cancer experience, or like one just like how like advanced and like widespread my cancer was. Like there were a lot of people who were surprised. Like I was never like in any pain, like never really felt it at all. Or when they discovered the tumor in my heart, I remember like when I went to the hospital for it, and like when the cardiologist was like on his way up to see me, he was like talking with like nurses or whatever, and they and he seemed like shocked that I actually like walked in the hospital like under my own power. He was expecting me to be like laid out or whatever. I'm like, oh, or even just how I reacted to the couple rounds of chemo that I did was like, you're handling this really, really well. Or like then when I went to see like one of my doctors the next week after my first round of chemo, he's like, well, usually like people just took what you took. Like when they come to see me in the office, like when I walk in, they're just like curled up in a ball on the floor under the desk or something. I'm like, but I'm just like, I feel kind of fine. Should I not?
It's almost
yeah.
like this is a simulation, and the program wasn't done with us yet. You know?
Or whoever programmed the cancer like fucked something up.
Yeah.
It's like they like and I guess go back to like video game parlance, like severely nerfed it accidentally.
We are all part of the Earth, and the Earth has a lot of systems we're just starting to understand. And so maybe like humanity is a function of an Earth system, a planetary.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how like the planet is about to do all kinds of crazy shit. Dude, it was above freezing at the North Pole recently, and then raining in West Antarctica. What the fuck? They were in like within a week of each other. It's like it was like record temperature and like 20 degrees. It was above freezing. And it's
that's a problem. But
you didn't even think that was really. Yeah. We thought like it maybe would just melt a little, like, but like still the North Pole would be really cold, you know,
right?
And it's 35 degrees today or whatever it was, and like normally below 0 Fahrenheit, but you know,
right? Yeah, but back to what you were saying about like systems and like people being a part of things, like so like that whole like sentence or paragraph or whatever it was, like you'd like describing that, and like as far as like people being like part of systems and like connecting, like that's something I think a lot of people would think of as like, oh, that's sounding like very, what you're describing is a very like spiritual reality about our connectedness, like, but it's like, I mean, yeah, to me that's just like one of those things that like
people, it would feel like that,
yeah,
but like, yeah, because it's so much bigger than us, and so our awareness of our interaction with it is gonna feel pretty esoteric.
Yeah, but sorry, to get back to, I want to let you finish your thing about like you talking about like going to see the doctors and then being like impressed with how well you were doing, but then eventually I want to like answer the question myself as well. Like, do I refer to myself as spiritual? The answer is also no, but I want to elaborate later. But let you finish first.
Dude, does blue jelly bean tastes like blue Caraco, you know, like the liqueur, but like if it was a perfume. It's not great. I don't even know what it's supposed to be. Probably blue Caraco or Curacao or whatever it is.
Yeah, but and I love, and I say this sincerely, I love how I'm like, all right, but I want to let you finish what you were talking about, and then you just go into like,
just blue jelly bean.
It's like, wait, that's not what you were talking, or was it what you were talking about? I don't know anymore.
I had a real bad concussion, so I don't remember a lot from that time period. All I remember was they got me a hospital bed at my mom's house so I could, because I was going to have to sleep off this concussion. But they had to like try and wake me up every so often just to make sure I wasn't like hemorrhaging in my brain hole. And and all I remember during that time was there was a Scooby-Doo marathon on Cartoon Network. Because that was back in the olden days when Cartoon Network didn't have a lot of stuff to air, and so they would have marathons all the time, like a Popeye marathon, like every night, overnight, you know.
Yeah. Or like it actually was a Looney Tunes marathon, but they didn't call it a Looney Tunes marathon. It was just like, look, like Looney Tunes is a thing. We're just going to show it for half the day.
Looney Tunes is amazing.
It's a spiritual experience, one might say. But yeah, so you had a hospital bed, concussed.
Yeah. So like, I remember bits and pieces, and I remember like I had to like, because they didn't want my lung to collapse, or they wanted it to heal or something. I don't remember what.
Yeah. It's good they didn't want it to collapse.
Well, I got punched in the ribs with a truck, so
Yeah, that'll affect your lungs.
It's this thing where I was supposed to. I don't remember if I was supposed to blow or suck in this device, and it was like a.
That's what she said.
I was supposed to get this floater to. I think it was to get it to go up because like a floating ball. I'm supposed to blow on it. I'm supposed to get it up above this certain line on
But
there.
it's supposed to but stay within the line. It's like in a video game, like on a football video game where you're about to do like a kickoff and you want to get the thing to stay.
Yeah, you gotta try to get the hover in there.
to
Try and get your. I don't know. Make sure all the lung shit is bellowsing like it should.
There you go.
Apparently that was supposed to hurt a lot, and it I don't know, it was really uncomfortable like the first time or two. But then I was like, supposed to just how many times a day? And this is super easy. And fuck this, I'm gonna do it. For as long as it's easy, I'm gonna do it fewer times a day. And if it gets harder, then I'll go back up.
There you go.
Then I stopped doing it early. And with my checkup, they were like, "Oh, you're doing really well," and I'm like, "It's good because I didn't do it very much."
Yep.
But my back was wrecked, dude. When I remember coming home from the hospital and walking up the steps because the garage was in the basement at my parents' house at that time, and so I'm trying to take a step up the steps, and it was excruciating. My parents had to hold me up because the pain made me I was gonna say weak in the knees, but it was more like everything down from the pain got weak. It wouldn't work right. And I mean, I have some back problems, but not even today. But that's not real. It's not really car accident stuff. That pain was up higher. Yeah, it was. Yeah, back pain. It can be worse. If you're this is excruciating, it's I mean, it's people joke about something hurts so bad you see colors. Yeah, I was colors and then wanting to black out. It was.
Yeah,
it was nuts. Knocked my glasses clean off me. They couldn't find them.
I'm glad you found others. Apparently, so that's good.
My dad went and because he got all my shit out of the car at the junk place, and he's couldn't find your glasses. Neither did the paramedics. I'm I might have had the window down because I was trying to stay awake because I was about ready to pass out. But I also kind of like the idea that I got hit so hard they just vaporized.
Yeah, they're just we with all the impact, just made all the molecules in them say, "Fuck it, we're out."
Maybe I left them in heaven. Who knows?
See, there you go. All right, so anything else you wanted to say on that before I give my answer? Before I say I'm not spiritual?
No, I mean, I also I'm not confident enough to say they're okay. I don't think the God of the Bible exists, but if there's something like a God, I think it's scientific, and it might be the universe as a whole, or whatever consciousness the universe resides in. Or, so some people would say that is me believing there's a God. I wouldn't say that. These are nebulous terms. I think is the problem.
Yeah, which we'll get into that too. Yeah.
All right,
I guess. Yeah. So for me, in case you didn't hear me say it earlier, yeah, I do not consider myself spiritual. Again, like Matt kind of was talking about, there's a lot of things I've been told by other people, oh, that's a spiritual way of thinking, or when it comes to what people mean by say well, do you believe in God? I say no, but here's some things I do believe in. And oh, but that is God. And I was so it's one of those things especially at first coming out of Christianity and kind of I guess establishing myself in atheism, whatever that means. I mean, like so many things about like faith and like religion and everything. I just was like being like very strongly like reactionary against. So like I would actually like get super upset and still do to an extent, but not as much. Like when people would try to tell me things like, "Oh, you're not really an atheist. You really do believe in God because you believe there's things like bigger than yourself, or you believe in love, and love is God." And I'm like, "No, I believe in all these same things. I just don't call them God." So like
Also, I
it would
believe you've mistaken gaslighting for kindness.
that too, yeah. That's because like all these people were saying it like they weren't trying to be like combative. Like you'll hear a lot of, especially like more hardcore like evangelical Christians or like Christian apologists saying like, "Oh, there really are no atheists because the Bible says everyone really believes in God." And it's like, and Apologia, if people are familiar with him, is a guy on YouTube. He had a really good response to that whole line of like argument. He's like, that's really like a poor move on their part, even though, like I said, that's what the Bible says. So they kind of have to say it. But that's, again, just how weak their position is. He's like, because like when it really comes down to it, the one thing that we can know for sure, if anything, is the content of our own thoughts and like what we actually believe. So basically,
Yeah.
if your strategy is to tell someone that you know what they believe better than they do, that they know you're wrong. So that's going to be a very poor mode of argumentation. I thought that was
Shouldn't they be
a
doing
great
something
point.
else? If they can know things like that, like, isn't there bigger shit they should be handling?
Right? Yeah. So yeah. So like, so I would have this like kind of like very like negative reaction, like when people would try to tell me things like, "Oh, you really do believe in God," or when they would try to describe like my views or how I think of life or whatever as spiritual. It's like I said, very strong aversion to those. And I've been kind of like trying to process like why. I mean, obviously, a lot of it's just sort of like being like very reactionary towards a lot of the issues I had with having faith and religion and all that. But something I've kind of been able to at least like put words to recently, like when it comes to like describing different God in different ways or trying or because to me like when people what it to me when yeah words when it came to like how people like define God, and especially like people who are whether they're like deconstructing or just like coming out of religion
Those people are
altogether.
the worst. My
I
goodness.
know. But it almost seemed like, and this is something that people like Dan Dennett would talk about a lot. Dan Dennett, I still highly recommend Dan Dennett's book Breaking the Spell, or basically he's just talking about like religion, like how it develops and or in like its place in like human development
Yeah.
and history and evolution and all that.
And
And he talks,
his thinking about like ideas act like viruses, like that was
yeah, hmm
that
yeah, brilliant dude,
very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. But yeah, sadly passed away last year.
Bye bye, Santa Bennett.
Yeah, Dennett. Yeah,
Bennett.
yeah,
Well, Bennett too, wherever he is.
yeah. He's probably cool. Um, yeah, I'm thinking of a guy I knew. Like last name was Bennett. He was cool. Anyway, mostly because he left his job as a pastor so he could become a doctor. I'm like much more helpful.
Mm.
Anyway, where
Figured he
was
could
I? Oh
preach
yeah,
people
so
for
the
real.
yeah right. Um, but so yeah, so the whole idea of like how like people's what they mean when they say God, just how it's evolved, not just like within a person, but even just like throughout human history, like going back to times of like the Bible or other ancient writings, like the gods were like very like physical beings that did physical things like eating and sleeping and killing and fucking and
Yeah,
all the things. Like if they
fucking
had,
happened a lot. Killing and
yeah.
fucking happened a lot.
Well, I mean that's kind of what we do. So, but then
Because that's what
so
people do.
basically,
It's weird how that works out.
I know. Yeah. So, like Dan Dennett, he talked about basically, like, in a very concise way that he would put it, is basically the transition from God as a being to just the ground of all being. I mean, and you'll still hear like a lot of this was something I heard a lot in like the Christian
Right.
deconstruction, like
So
progressive
see,
Christian
that's
circles. Is like, so God isn't a being; He's just the ground of all being. I'm like,
but
what
that
does
takes
that
God into the
mean?
realm of
And
That's like saying I don't believe in the God of the Bible. I believe in like a sciencey God, because like the ground of all being is a
Yeah, so,
thing, and it seems to be a singular
yeah.
thing. Ground of all being meaning like the energy everything's made of,
hmm
like
Yeah,
that.
but then but a lot of the people using that term, they probably wouldn't view it, say it's like a very sciencey thing. Like they also seem to be
Well,
like
right.
pretty averse to like trying to be like all scientific about being naturalist and whatever. But so so to me, like noticing that shift in perception, like to me like because people would say, oh, this just means like we're understanding God more. I'm like, is it that you're understanding God more, or that we're actually starting to understand reality more, but you're still wanting to hold on to the God thing, so you're just molding God to fit whatever we now understand about reality? So that's kind of where I landed on it, and that's why I was like just wanting nothing to do with that, because and part of it, like I said, a lot of it was very reactionary. I think a lot of it was probably just me coming off of realizing I'd spent like my entire life believing these things that are apparently not even true. So I was just like very cautious about latching on to something else that I couldn't know for sure was true, especially like something like that magnitude and like that high importance. Because obviously, like we all act on things like every day that we can't know for sure are true. Like like when I take another sip of my beer, like I can't know for sure that it's going to taste like the last sip or taste like a sock. But
I mean, you don't know everything will stop
yeah,
exist if everything will stop existing before
yeah.
you even get there.
Right. So, but when it comes to something like, okay, this is what I'm going to actually like dedicate my life to, or build it around, or like base my way of thinking on, it's like I'm done like doing that with stuff that can't, in at least I'm about to say like can't be shown to be true. But then there's a whole discussion. Well, can we even know what's true? Like, just in the context of like what we usually mean by like knowing things or the best we can, like just whatever that means. So and so like the same thing when it comes to like being spiritual, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't believe in like supernatural stuff, so I don't believe in spirits. And also this might also be the tism, but thinking like when I think of words, I usually think of them like in like very like literal sense. So like even like the word spiritual to me, okay, that has spirit in it. I don't believe in spirits, so I don't feel like using the word spiritual to describe anything. But but speaking of like how people define it, and again, like you said, part of the problem is like these words just become so nebulous that like
They really only
I,
mean something based on like your
yeah,
subculture that you're in. I mean, because
yeah.
you go
So
outside of that group and it means something different.
yeah, so but recently, so speaking of my therapist a couple weeks ago, she had me do this exercise where it was about like kind of like honing in and like focusing on like what are my values, like trying to
Mhm.
figure out like what are the things I value in life. And so it was basically this website that gave you like all these options, like pick between like these, like which one, like pick your like top five or whatever, and it like would give descriptions. And one of the options as far as like having a value was spirituality. But I was a little thrown because here's how it defined spirituality:
Yeah,
appreciating the need to understand one's inner self and its relationship with the world. I'm like,
that
yeah, I value that, but to me, that like calling that spirituality is like that. It's just like self awareness. Like I don't get why. Yeah, just appreciating the need to understand one's inner self. Like, yeah,
right.
and its
There's
relationship with the world. It's like that, but that could be like a completely like naturalistic, like scientific, like way of looking at things too. So like,
right,
so
but
I'm
the
just
effect.
very annoyed with this one website that like that's what they call spirituality. But
Well,
yeah,
when I was in the mental hospital, they talked about how spirituality was super important, and that was basically their description of spirituality.
hmm
Was it's not just the self awareness. It's like the like the ritual and the practice of self awareness. So that there was something about the impact that that has on people that seems to be like you get much more out of that than you put into it. So there it that kind
hmm
of focus on self awareness functions like um, a connection to a higher power. And so they call it spirituality because it causes things to happen in the human brain that don't fit into another one of your categories. But it's completely a secular thing. It can be God based if you want, but their focus is on self awareness. And man, I could tell sometimes that some of the older ladies, because they were in a separate, they were on the other side. There was like mirror facilities, like one was a mirror image of the other, and we were connected by like the central nurses station. We couldn't see them, but they had the same setup we did. And when we did like certain group therapy things, they like they would come over and join us for some of those. There were a couple of the older ladies who were like really into like God spirituality stuff, and it was like really hitting me how like the therapists who were leading the session, they're not supposed to invalidate anybody's spiritual stuff because that's like it can be super unstabilizing.
Yeah.
So they would work around it a little bit, but there were things where somebody was like, it was just, you could just tell it was stuff where it was getting in the way of their self-awareness. Like they were surrendering a lot of themselves to that, and then they didn't need to be aware of that part because God was handling it. But really, all you're doing is kind of dissociating from something, but also like labeling it divine. Not good, not great. Felt bad for them, and I wanted to be like, no, you can do more. Like that. Not telling you you need to give up on God, but just like, I don't know, God would want you to do this because, like, sounds like He's hiding parts from you that are you, and or you're letting Him, and it doesn't sound good.
Right? Yeah. So basically so a point I came to recently, and this is something I've like told to Matt. I told with Matt. We were talking. Told with that.
I was probably talking over you, so I mean that kind of works. You told with me. Yeah. I was also saying something. Is what I mean.
Okay. I like that. But putting words to, like, not just it's kind of a combination of like finding new words to describe where I'm at, but also like being in a new place with it, like kind of both at the same time, which is a new experience for me because I don't usually I get to a place and then like months later I have words for it. But this is like cool, like all at the same time kind of thing. So basically, when I think of like what people would call spirituality, whether it's that definition of that this website exercise thing gave about like just understanding your inner self and its relationship to the world or whatever other people like. So like I said, it's all these things. Like I said, I value, and that's why on this thing, like I had no idea like how to say whether I valued. I think I ended up just saying no, just because I just hated the word. I think it was just more just out of principle. I was just mad at it for wording it that way. So like I said, I definitely believe in I love like understanding more about me and my inner self and my relationship with the world. Like that stuff is super interesting and cool to think about to me. But the way I would put it is like, I just don't find the term like spiritual or spirituality to be useful or helpful when I talk about those things.
Is there a little baggage with it too? Where like it's a little triggering?
Was that a question, or are you just?
Yes, it was a question.
Okay. Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely have baggage with it, and that's actually something I pointed out. Like, we didn't get to it in my last session with my therapist. That was something like right at the end. I said, "Here's something I want to talk," because we were talking about like that exercise I said I wanted to talk about that, and she seemed definitely keen on that. So. But yeah, I mean, I fully admit I absolutely have all kinds of baggage with like just about any term that like related with like Christianity or faith or religion or spirituality, I guess, if you want to say. But yeah, and part of it is like I said, this is just kind of how I think about these words. Is like because like I don't want to call it spirituality because I'm like I don't believe in any kind of spirit basically, but and like the same with like when people like are coming up with like different definitions of God or different things that like God means to them, like so like to me, like yeah, if there is something out there like in the universe that is like kind of holding everything together and is like even if there is like some singular thing that is like the reason that anything exists at all, I mean unless it is like some kind of like
They shouldn't call it the Big Bang. They should call it the Big Coitus.
all right, another kind of Big Bang, yeah. Yeah. It just kind of climaxed all over the everything.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that was just like it was the big like reality money shot.
Yeah, it wasn't an explosion so much as a rapid expansion.
Oh, something rapidly expanding now. That's not true.
I mean, weird timing.
Yeah. Well, good thing it's off camera, at least for now. See how much? Sorry. But yeah.
Maybe thinking basketball. When we're in the locker room.
Well,
or he like unrolls his penis or something.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're talking about a movie, so I haven't seen it.
You never saw basketball?
No.
I thought that was just something people watched like for shits and giggles, like all during the same period.
Well, no, like because like back like whenever it was that came out, I was still like in the point of my life where like I don't watch movies like that kind of phase. So
okay,
yeah,
man,
but I did. But anyway, so yeah, so like so even when it comes to different ways that people will define God and like so like I said, so even if there is like some individual thing that is actually the ground of all being, like to me, like unless it is actually some kind of like being or like some sort of like intelligent personal thing, like because that's what like most people like have meant like throughout human history. When they say like a god, they mean like a being, like an intelligent personality, like in whatever form, or you think it's physical, spiritual, whatever, but it
some kind of superhuman, like
yeah,
like
but it's
ultra human.
Yeah. So to me, like holding on to that term, but then like applying it to something that's completely different, like just again, this is just how my brain works, like with words and concepts and things. Like to me, that just seems so incredibly unhelpful, and like because of all like whether it's my baggage or other people's baggage with like words like that, like it's like when Jordan Peterson was trying to tell Sam Harris that he wasn't actually or really any atheist, that he's not actually an atheist. You're like, you do believe in God. It's like, okay, but what Sam Harris means by God is like what most people mean when they say it. But like Jordan Peterson, of course, has his own definition of like what God really means. It's like, okay, I believe in the thing that you're talking about. I just don't find it helpful or useful to call it God.
Right. If Jordan Peterson wants to use his version of the word and say, well, you believe in God. Okay, well, then it's equally valid for Sam Harris to say, I don't.
Yeah, or it would be equally valid for Sam Harris to say, well, here's how I define God, and you don't believe in that, so therefore you're an atheist. Like he has like equal footing to say that to him. So
I think Yoda was God. What up now?
Or as I established on previous episodes, like I guess I'm God. So was that last week or the week before? I don't know. Go back and watch both. It was entertaining, I think. Probably. Sure.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that like the more self-awareness you practice, like the more mystical it starts to feel. Or it starts to kind of insights you can get and like the peace and stuff, it does feel similar to Christian-y stuff, but um, I don't know how else to describe it. They're looking back on the Christian feeling. There was an element of pretend there, or at least
yeah,
a feeling of pretending. But I wasn't pretending at the time, or if I was, I didn't know I was.
right.
It feels more real now. Like I feel like I understand what the fruits of the spirit are now. Whereas before I was like, oh, I want those. Those sound nice, and I had one. I had it for like a day, and now I need to do something. Like,
Yep.
because Christianity was all about like short-term returns, like in the present, or at least that's what you were chasing. Even if you said it wasn't all about that, and even if you said it was all about heaven, and so fuck everybody here, but get those fruit of the spirit, and you don't want to be a dead tree and make dead fruit or whatever it was, and
yeah, whatever the fuck.
But Jesus killed a fig tree. What do I do now? Maybe Jesus will kill you because you're not producing fruit just like that fig tree. But it was out of season for figs.
Yeah, but he fucking cursed it anyway. Yeah.
Like either that was like a deep metaphor nobody was catching, or that was a Roman Jew who didn't understand fig trees. And
I definitely
he was going for was dependent on that being the right time of year for figs.
Yeah, and because that like, so just quick side tangent, right? Well, like we can do those. I'm gonna try. That's one of the things. Like, speaking of, or we have talked about before, like maybe devote an entire episode to this sometime, but things that like atheists will try to argue, or just non-believers in general, that actually kind of bug me is like they'll point to passages like that to say like, oh, look, see how like stupid Jesus was, or like how stupid the Gospels are, and like it's like, okay,
but the writer was stupid.
Well, but from what I remember, I think like it even said somewhere like in the actual text, like it made reference to like it was out of season. So it's like, okay, clearly like the author like, or even if it didn't, like I would have to think, okay, clearly the author knew, but so like I said, there has to be some kind of like deeper metaphor. Like they're not trying to like tell a literal story. Like,
yeah,
that's basically something like as stupid as like Jesus like telling a fish to climb a tree. It's like, okay, he clearly knows that that's not a thing that can happen, but there must be something else going on here. That because like, believe it or not, text from like 2,000 years ago, written in a completely different language and culture than ours, might have some things that we don't understand. You know,
it seemed like Jesus was like rejecting something that was out of season.
I think it was supposed to be like symbolic of his rebuke of like the people of Israel,
right? Like but kind of like they're
believing in him, and
they're not able to hear. It's not time for them to hear, and so fuck them. Yeah. Like, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, well, because also got to remember, from all like near as I can tell, like Jesus was like very apocalyptic, as in like when he said like when that verse where he says like this generation will not pass away before they see like the apocalypse, basically, like he probably meant it, like, so he's like, well, it's
was probably like genuinely fuck them, like,
so it's like, well, if you're not getting it now, like, it's like your time's up. So but anyway, so where the fuck was I?
Jesus has spoken, I mean God.
Yes, Jesus was so clearly God that even in the middle of the 4th century, Christians were still having councils to decide if he was God or not. But anyway,
kind of sounds like not a key fact. Like, you know, which probably means he didn't think he was God. Because if he thought that, wouldn't that be like your get out of jail free card, or like your ID card?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But I guess you wouldn't say it very much, since it would get you killed in a hurry. He was just real
Yeah.
coy, and it was like, "Kill me if
Right.
you want to." And
Yeah. So, all right. So, to kind of bring it back to the conversation, but also take it to a new place. Um, but
like a
speaking of
helix.
things, ooh, I like it. I like it. But speaking of things like near death experiences and things that like people who, even if they are like post like Christianity or like religion in general, or they might even say faith, but they still believe in like the supernatural kind of things, like it's like they'll so there's this discussion I get in with people like and friends, like it's all like good nature and everything, but because like I consider myself a naturalist. Some people might call me a materialist. Like I prefer naturalist. I don't really understand the distinction, but it's basically I just don't believe in the supernatural, but I don't necessarily think that everything in the natural world is like necessarily material. So I don't know if like materialist
Ooh, yeah, because it's really
really,
not. It's really just like
yeah,
solid energy
yeah. So I mean, and this is, I mean,
existing at the speed of light. None
yeah,
of this makes sense.
yeah. But I mean, people have referred to me as a materialist. Like I don't, not sure, I don't, whatever. I guess that doesn't bother me as much as like when people say the whole like, "Oh, you really are spiritual, or you do believe in God." But
It's like whatever floats your
material,
boat, dickhole.
yeah. It's like yeah, materialist, sure, close enough. But but there's this whole like discussion around like it seems like consciousness and like the study thereof, or like trying to the trying to figure out what the fuck is going on thereof, is like a big thing in the whole like supernatural versus like natural whatever debate discussion, whatever you want to call it. um
Wouldn't
and people,
supernatural just be like extra natural, like the next level of natural?
yeah, because I guess my hang up, I guess, because also like supernatural can mean different things to different people, but for me it's if I could kind of boil it down, and if there's anyone watching like who considers themselves like a supernaturalist or believer in the supernatural, like if you have different views, like please leave them in the comments, whether it's now or if you're watching later. But from near as I can figure, it's to put it maybe crudely, maybe too crudely, to me it's almost like people will just label something supernatural if it's just beyond our understanding. If Because when I say things like, well, I don't believe in God or I don't believe in anything supernatural, like a response that I'll get or other atheists or naturalists will get is like, well, what do you mean you don't like you have to believe that there's something like bigger than yourself? It's like, well,
Like,
yes, of
well,
course I
duh.
believe, like, but to me,
Conversation over because you think I'm stupid.
yeah. But so basically, like I think so much of the conversation about like when people talk about like spirituality or supernaturalism, and this is something to unpack, but I think too much of the conversation is very like anthropogenic, if that's the right word, but it's basically
Yeah.
like or anthropocentric. So it's almost like,
Ooh, that's probably more right.
yeah, because basically people say that. So in the example of people will say, well, if there's things that we don't understand, that's what we call supernatural, as if like the limit of human cognition for some reason is such a special boundary that anything beyond that is suddenly not natural anymore. Or like say, well, I mean, an
Kind of
ant
like
or an
saying
earthworm.
the gap in our knowledge is God. It's like
Right. Yeah.
literally God of the gaps.
Yeah. So that's why I sometimes I'll use the phrase like spirituality of the gaps or supernaturalism of the gaps, but it's almost like too, like an ant or like a flower or whatever. Like they don't understand humans, so does that mean? But that doesn't mean we're supernatural. But people's like, well, we're supernatural to them. Okay, well then that's again like that to me
It's not the
like
flex you
completely,
think it is.
yeah, that's again just completely unhelpful distinction. So for instance, like so with some of the examples, so there was one example I heard recently, and I'd say who I heard it from. He probably wouldn't mind, but just since I don't know, I'm not going to say names. But if he's watching, feel free to chime in. Like, because it's the way I would, like when people talk about things that they consider very supernatural, whether you call it like paranormal experiences, or we were talking about like near death experiences, or um, so I don't want to pick on this example, as if it's like I said, as if it sounds like I'm picking on the person trying to attack it. But like it was just a story I heard recently from a friend talking about someone else that like I think this one example is it's just I think it's just a good like kind of baseline thing for me to talk through and say like what my feelings are. So this friend like relaying the story from a friend of his who went through this experience. I don't. It was like his home was like broken into. I don't remember in the story if he was like just shot at or was like actually shot.
Mhm.
Um, but like survived it. But from the way they described it, and this was like like getting into things like how they're like multiple and like parallel universes and like how like every time like an action is taken like or we make a choice it like and basically all possible choices create like all possible like basically an infinite amount of parallel
Yeah.
worlds because basically what this person described was okay like I think if I'm remembering correctly they actually were shot like in the face but it's like but like they like and they said like all this was happening in slow motion for them and like they like turned their face like just at the right time so like the bullet like missed like what would have actually killed them like whatever part in their head or
Yeah.
brain or whatever but they said like part of the experience was when they turned and looked they actually saw like different versions of themselves like one was like laying on the floor dying and like one was like running away to safety and it's like so they chose to follow the one that was like running away to safety but they said
Interesting.
like but then they also said like after the experience there were so many things about their world that were like different than they were before they said like so like later like it was like whether it was the next day or like whenever they recovered they usually went out running and they said it was something like the place on the usual running path like there was this park that they would run by but then when he ran by it, like the park was gone and it was now a shopping center.
Mm.
Or and they also said like their kids like were suddenly like into completely different music than they had been into before. So it said there were like all these like some little some bigger things about their reality that were just different now. So the way this was interpreted by the person telling this to me was like basically they did like I don't know they call it like a dimension jump or
Hmm.
whatever. And so but for me it's like and so, and I was like responding, like, not necessarily about this story in particular, but just like the concept of like these kinds of stories and like reported experiences. The way I put it is like, I'm not saying I discount it. I just have so many questions.
Yeah, he's not,
Like,
or whoever that person was that who had that experience. They're not the only one. Like that's happened to. I would say I don't know how many people, but it's something that like several people have described, and it's actually the plot line or or a plot mechanism for Man in the High Castle, written by Philip K. Dick,
yeah, yeah.
who himself struggled with mental health challenges, and I think had experiences like repeatedly where he slipped between places
Yeah.
because he was kind of writing from his own intuition or his own experiences. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like that that could be possible. I wouldn't call it spiritual.
Yeah. So, but like, so this is something like honestly, like, I'm still like you call it like skeptical towards this side of thing. But like
I
I
mean, it
said,
makes
like to me,
sense
it's yeah,
to
to
be
me it's like
skeptical.
to me like I said, I just have so many questions because the people who like are like totally like buying into this thing, like yes, that's a real thing that actually happened, and like there's something whether you want to call it supernatural, paranormal, or whatever you want to call it going on. Like I'm like I said, even if it happens to multiple people, like so like question like so for me like one of the first things that I don't know if I want to say it's like a red flag, but like okay, we're we're starting with something that is like an incredibly like one just like physically and like emotionally, mentally like traumatic experience. Like that'll do shit to your brain. Like that will like
Yeah, and
so
also
all the things where he
maybe
says
not
like
that stuff. I'd say it'd be really weird to do that stuff, but doesn't mean it didn't. Like you're right. Like there's still a reason to be skeptical.
Yeah, and so I guess to like I said, the reason like I use this example just because there's so many things specifically about it I can like kind of focus in on the
Mhm.
next question about. So even like just the part of it where he was like seeing like different versions of himself, and this was supposed to be like a representation of that whole like okay, every time we take any sort of action or anything happens, like basically the universe just like splits off like in all like possible realities, like it. So but to me, it's like, but the way he described it in the story to me, and again, not knowing what that would actually be like, but to me, that sounds less like if that were real, like if that was actually happening, like all the
Mhm.
time. To me, that sound the way he described seeing it, that sounds less like what it would actually be like, and more like what a person would imagine that it would be like. If that makes sense. Like
Right.
for example, another thing like I've heard people talk about, like you'll see this in like in movies or TV or whatever all the time, is like where like time will stop, but
Mhm.
like except for like one person, and they're like seeing like everything frozen and whatever. Like,
People
but
have
like scientists,
experienced that too.
yeah, but scientists have said like if time actually stopped, like you wouldn't be able to tell because time would
Right.
also stop for all the things that are going on in your perception that are perceiving things because your perception requires time to be passing. So if time stops, you're not perceiving anything. So like
Yeah,
time could have,
I'd say
yeah.
it's
So like,
it's probably more like instead of time stopping, your awareness of reality slipped into like supercharged mode or something, and so you were aware of how quickly you were perceiving things that it felt like it slowed down.
mm-hmm,
Because our brains are like, if you tapped into like how quickly your brain is taking in things, to like consciously experience that, it would probably feel like all of that was happening slowly because it's happening so quickly that I could see how you like your awareness of it would
yeah,
slow it down or your perception of it.
yeah. So I guess like to draw like analogy between like the whole time stopping and then this guy talking about seeing different realities. To me, like his description of like what he saw, like so like when it's in like TV and movies or when people like say, "Well, time stopped and I saw everything for," like to me, like that's what people would imagine, what people imagine it would be like if time were to stop. But if it actually were to stop, it wouldn't be like that at all. So like for me, like my question is like, and again, this also goes back to the whole like how like kind of anthropocentric this view of the whole like multiple universes splitting off, because like people usually only talk about it in terms of like decisions that they make, but like it's also like in terms of like because like my furnace just kicked on. It's like, okay, well, there's also realities where my furnace kicked on like a split second later or a split second sooner. And when it did kick on, all the individual air molecules that it's pushing out like travel in slightly different directions. But so like when, but when people are describing things like, well, I saw like these different universe, like they're only talking about it in terms of like their decisions, like because also like they're
Mhm.
apparently infinite. So why did this guy only see like a handful of different possibilities? Like because like he said in one version, like let's just take like the version that he said he followed, like where it was a guy running away. Okay, well there would have been even just infinite versions of a guy running to safety. It's like a guy running like a a billionth of a mile an hour slower and a billionth of a mile an hour faster, and like in his arms as he was running were in like minuscule, like all the different positions that his arms could have been in, or that,
Mhm.
or was he looking back or not, or even just as I'm saying this sentence right now, like all the different like the like the pitch my voice is at, the speed at which I'm saying the words I'm saying, like how much space is in between the words, like what my hands are doing right now. It's like
And if you go back,
yeah,
if you go back in time since the start of the universe and how many different ways it could have played out, like
yeah.
it kind of seems like then all the potentials just like exponentially explode, and like uh,
Yeah, so I guess
at
like,
this
and I
time
guess
it
because
would
they would,
like at this point it would just be a mess. Like like
well,
there would
because
be
like,
so many.
and like they say, that's part of the theory. Like they even say, like there are literally like an infinite amount of use. So an infinite amount of universes, like accommodates for all those. But I'm just saying, like, so, but if that's what this guy is seeing, like I said, this is just like questions I have. It's like, why was he only seeing like 2 or 3 different versions of these apparently infinite, and why was he only seeing different versions of what he was doing? Like, why was he not seeing different versions of what the home invader was doing? Why was he not seeing different versions of like the light as it was traveling around? Why was he not seeing different versions of whatever, like literally anything else that was going on? Why was he only seeing? Yeah. So
I think so. What's going on with like quantum physics and stuff? They're finding out that the present moment is real hazy, and it's almost like it's not a thing. It's just the overlap between the past and the future, and so in that case, the anxiety and the heightened awareness and like the spidey sense that kicked in, like maybe he was aware of his brain was taking like the 2 main ways this goes is either I die or I get away, and became aware of the possible futures that hadn't been solidified yet because it hadn't happened yet. And so it may be becoming thing about the park not being there, and if it is a parallel dimension crossover thing, I would say it just feels more likely that instead of trading places with like him that was like he's the one from the other dimension, and it would make more sense to me that like if there are other dimensions very similar to ours, and he had an awareness of that, like then it in that version of the X-Files, like it I could see how like he also picked up on that person's memories and he confused them for his own. Doesn't mean like he's from the other timeline.
Yeah, but again, like so many questions. Like one, like okay, like
I think it's a mistake to say.
If he went to like another reality or dimension, well, what happened to the him that was already there?
Well, he's the guy on the floor dead.
It's like, well, like that kind of sucks for him. That so apparently that means that like another version of me can just like swap places with me, like against my will. Like he can apparently just do that, and now I'm dead and he's me. But also like
things overlap right beyond your control. I mean,
but yeah, but again, like I said, these are all questions that I would love like to hear if there are actual answers to. But if there aren't answers to these questions, and I don't see how anyone can definitively say this is what's happening. But
I think it makes more sense like if somebody says it's like this, it's as if this happened.
Yeah, that's because like other questions like
this is what happened. I know for sure.
Yeah, but also questions to me like, okay, if this is a real thing, why doesn't this happen way more often? And like again, to me, like, okay,
black holes don't happen a lot. They're not happening everywhere. I mean, so like if there's a sciencey thing happening, it could be because ley lines intersected, and who knows?
Yeah, but again, like I said, like yeah, but again, like I said, to me, before anyone can make any kind of definitive claim about what's happening, like these are things, especially if you're explaining this as a thing that you're wanting me to like buy into or believe or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like, so, yeah. So I'm like, okay. And again, like, why doesn't this happen more often? 'Cause again, to me, like, okay, this seemed to only happen during a time when something so traumatic happened that can like really like fuck with your brain and make you maybe think you're seeing all these things. Like, and yeah. So, and why, yeah, I mean, this should be something like, why can't I like, and why does this never seem to happen? Or maybe it does, and I just don't know about it. But like, why am I not right now like seeing like different versions of myself saying this sentence? Or why am I not seeing a version of myself where like we never even started this podcast and I'm over there on my couch watching TV or something? Or
I mean, it's possible the experience was so traumatic for that person that like memories got fucked up. Like
yeah, and okay. Yeah, but speaking of like memories getting fucked up, because okay, this is maybe another slight tangent on this, but like related is so when I hear a lot of the people like trying to make the arguments of like all these like paranormal things are real and like all you scientific materialists are like dismissing it, like it seems like one of the bases
Space. No, I don't know.
bases for a lot of this argument, like they keep like that they think is like a real, I don't know, like a good argument to make against having a more like scientific materialist naturalist whatever view is like, 'cause they'll always start with how like flawed our perceptions are, how flawed like human memory is, and like oh you think you're seeing all these things that are like totally natural, but like but so it's like they'll try to start like with the premise that like our perceptions and memories are so faulty.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to people thinking, well, I only see like things as being natural, and like if I can't prove it, I don't believe it or whatever. But somehow I'm supposed, and again, this is just questions, but like, okay, but why am I supposed to believe that people like this who like went through that experience, why am I supposed to believe that his perception of what happened there was trustworthy? Again,
Because
especially
special pleading.
exactly. To me, yes. Like if I'm honest, to me, it does seem like special pleading again because, like, especially given the fact that like these things, and again going back to like the whole near death experience thing, like these things are only happening during times when people are going through like such like traumatic experiences that we actually scientifically know can really fuck with your perception, with your memory, and but I'm supposed to just believe that okay now their perception is trustworthy, but like when I'm saying well my perception of like there's nothing supernatural and like oh well your perception's flawed and like memories and blah corrupt and blah blah blah, I'm like yeah like I said it like I said I want to know more about it, but at this point like you said yeah it seems like special pleading to say well these are trustworthy. Yeah we can, it's like we can trust all these things that are completely not verifiable. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like just having a more scientific approach to things, well, you can't trust your perceptions. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean,
I feel like I've been talking a lot. You
it
talk.
feels like. So I think it's possible something like God exists, but like the God of the Bible, no. I think it's something possible like angels and demons exists, but like angels and demons, no. But learning about some of the non-human intelligence stuff around like UFO stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like if people in the past saw some of these things, like the picture of or the imagery of angels in white gowns and stuff, if they had experiences like the people who are experiencing NHI stuff, then like I could see them making sense of it in a particular way. Or like chariots in the sky, or all that kind of stuff, like Ezekiel or Elijah, Ezekiel, I think. Ring like wheels in the sky, burning wheels or something.
Yeah, I think that was Ezekiel. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, Elijah was like taken to heaven in a chariot of fire or something. Yeah,
ah,
but yeah, as far as like just the visions of like the wheel within the wheel and all that, I
so I
think
think
that's Ezekiel.
there's
Yeah.
like supernatural stuff in the Bible. I think if those were real experiences and that's how they conveyed it to other people, and the ones that might have been based on real experiences, it's like Moses didn't write shit, like he was a character in a story. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But people were, I think.
Yeah, because when it comes to stuff like that, like people will like talk about it, like you said, like, well, what did they see that they described? Like, I guess to
Well,
me,
if it's
like,
real, they
again,
saw something.
yeah,
Right.
or like to me, like, and again, this is with my like very limited like knowledge, but to me, it's like, well, why should I believe that this was actually like a real thing that they were describing and not just a completely metaphorical story like this description of like a wheel within a wheel? It's not because they saw something and that's the best way they could describe it, and like no, this is like just a completely metaphorical, if you want to say made up or whatever story. And like,
but like the reason why metaphors work is
Yeah.
because reality can be like whatever the comparison is.
mm-hmm.
But then again, that's saying like map reality, and instead of going Map reality.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, so all that stuff to say, whether it was with, like I said, that one specific, I forget the term that was used for like dimensional jumping or something like that. With the guy who was shot at with. Also, like for
It was
also
like
like
dimensional jumping. I think that's as far as
also
I'm
just want to
willing to
say
go.
like I'm obviously like I'm whatever actually happened. Like I'm glad that the dude survived and is here to have all these like memories and impressions or whatever. But also like but like I said, it's just something like I just have like so many questions, and to me like it's yeah, like I said before, like as people would be frustrated with those who say, well, there can't, well, there's obviously has to be a naturalistic explanation for that. If they're frustrated with that, then do you understand the frustration of like maybe people like me who say, well, there can't possibly be a naturalistic explanation? It's like because again, going back to the whole like
Rough, sir.
part of like the premise. Part of like the premise, like I said, a lot of their arguments is things like how flawed our perceptions are, how flawed our memories are, and how like science is very limited and can't so yeah, so it can't understand a lot of things. That also includes like we can't understand it well enough to say for certain that it's not scientific or it's not natural or it's not material. So yeah, I guess that's just my like I'm not so again where I'm coming from is like I'm not trying to dismiss it because like we talked about before, like whether it's with different like spiritual phenomenon or like our experiences like doing like prophetic and healing prayer and having all this stuff, like it's like okay, something is happening. So I agree, like yes, let's investigate what's going on, but to me like investigating what's going on includes not saying, well, like while at the same time admitting how limited like scientific investigation is and how it's like continuing to develop, like is continuing to develop, like well saying that at the same time as well, but science can't explain it, so there is no scientific explanation. It's like I felt like I worded that very poorly, but yeah, it's almost like they're trying to have it both ways. It's like, yeah, am I making sense?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
good.
I think my
Yeah,
brain just skipped dimensions.
it happens. I have that effect on people.
Whoa. Excuse me.
So yeah, so like I said, that's from my point of view. Like, yeah, just saying it can't be natural is just as problematic as saying it can't be supernatural. So I'm just like, let's
Yeah.
just like so whatever it is. Like, yeah, I want to figure out what it is. I'm just not. I just don't think we're at the point where we can write off a naturalistic explanation for any of this stuff. So
I think
yeah,
I think saying for sure, so an experience that feels beyond you, right? Saying what that is for sure.
mm-hmm.
Like spirit, like definitely spiritual, definitely natural. Saying like for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it limits. Okay, for the two options for like spiritual or not, I think it limits um your degree of. It puts like a door or a locked gate or something up in your self-awareness in that area. Like your ability to
Mm-hmm.
introspect on that is now cut off because for sure what it was. um but and if you're contributing it to like a spiritual thing for sure, you kind of you've decided what kind of spiritual it was, or what that spiritual event was, and then you're not you're less in wonder of that moment now. So I guess that's kind of like outwardly focused introspection.
Huh. Interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, tell me all about me, God.
Because you're totally there. and can do that.
And I'm not really talking to myself. It's like, you are, but it's third person. It's super weird stuff.
Yeah, we covered that. Was that? No, last week we did the video reaction. It was the week before that we were talking about like prayer and how that was probably talking to ourselves. So yeah, go back and watch that. I remember that being good. So
I have something I want to talk about in the second half.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah,
right.
I guess just to wrap up first drink, because I already wrapped up.
I also already started my second.
No. That's cheating.
A few minutes ago, I really, you were halfway through yours and I'd all the way finished mine. And I was a little worried because it's like 8.9% and I really wasn't feeling it. But I also did eat 3 servings of jelly beans. So.
So more sugar for it to eat.
Yeah, I had to eat like 330 calories worth of jelly beans.
Nice.
And about 60 grams of sugar.
That's living, my friend. I approve. Your dentist may not, but I approve.
I haven't seen him in a few years. I haven't seen him since COVID. Joke's on him. My teeth are whole. I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't been to the dentist.
Yeah, what he doesn't know won't hurt you. Sure. So I guess so I guess that's why I guess another reason why I don't find like the terms like calling something God or supernatural or spiritual, whatever, necessarily helpful. Like just because I still don't believe we're at the point where we can even know what that is. Like now, like I said, it is a gap in our knowledge. So if you say, well, like, so my point of view is like, at least from my perspective, like all that I know for sure exists are natural things. So if there's a thing that is beyond my understanding, I guess my default is I'm just going to fall back on, well, given the options of natural or supernatural, like, well, natural is the only thing that I actually know for sure to exist. So I guess until proven otherwise, which I'm open to being proven otherwise, but I'm personally just going to default to, okay, well, there's probably a natural explanation, even if we don't know what it is. Because like I think that also involves like having not saying that like people think otherwise don't have humility, but for me, like it's just the humility of understanding, okay, just because we don't understand something doesn't mean it's some special kind of thing. Like, yeah. So yeah. And so when it comes to it also goes back to just like the trajectory and like track record we have. Like every time we have actually figured out, at least as far as we can, like for sure what's going on, like it's always been a natural explanation. Like there have only been things that we previously thought were supernatural, but then later found out weren't, and were actually completely natural explanations for things. But there's never been something where we had a natural explanation for it and then later found out for sure, oh, it's actually supernatural. So,
yeah.
I
mean, at best, we're finding out it was aliens.
Right? Which are still natural, but
yeah,
just beyond us.
Although one is a lady in a super bright, like dress thing with glowing blue eyes and kind of blonde hair. So
was maybe that was a thing like several decades ago, like in Egypt, there was this big like what a lot of people thought was like a sighting of the Virgin Mary, like in Egypt or something.
Oh, it could have been that deal. Yeah,
might have been. I don't know.
Also, it's super uncomfortable that like that the Germans in the 40s, some of their fan fiction seems like accidentally realistic. Because like,
okay, sorry, are we moving on to second drink territory here with this, or
no? I meant was the thing about the blonde hair and the blue eyes, like
okay,
if somebody saw that same thing, I could see them running with that, as only Germans could. Actually, that's false. As Germans and Americans could.
Yeah, unfortunately. So,
except ours is like more a skin color thing. Like the Nazism in our country is more skin color based and
Hmm.
sexuality based, and less
Yeah.
Jewish. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like
to be fair, the Nazis in Germany were also going after like the homosexuals and different skin colored people as well. But
I did think it was
yeah,
interesting though that when the Nazis were in Cincinnati, the little group of
oh yeah, because we had
butt
those.
fuckers, they
Yeah.
they were run like the black residents ran them off. Jewish
Hmm.
people were nowhere to be seen. Like how many Jewish people drove under the underpass and they're like, oh, but like they didn't do anything about it. Uh, Erin brought that up. She's like, shouldn't it have been Jewish people beating the shit out of him? And like, that is weird. That like,
I'm not going to put a should on the situation. I'm just going to say I'm glad somebody did.
no. Like,
Yeah.
she didn't mean like
Yeah.
obligated morally or anything. It was just kind of like,
Right. Yeah.
hey,
It
there
would
weren't
have
any
seemed
Jewish
more.
people that showed up. That's interesting. I don't know. I have no idea what that indicates, but
Yeah.
also super cool. That humanist report guy.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that video, the videos that he had on there before about what people were doing. Also, Lincoln Heights is strapped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You do not want a Nazi around there. It's
Like I
gonna have a
way
bad
more
time.
long guns than I would have expected. You know, like shotguns and shit, and like
Mm-hmm.
and rifles
Yeah.
and
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else on the like thoughts on like spiritual terms, natural, supernatural, before we
um.
close that discussion out?
No, I just remembered I got that lady's name wrong. That I told you about that. Got the position in the Trump administration. Kat
Oh,
Kerr or Kat Kerr
okay.
is her name.
Well, we'll get to that here shortly. But yeah, like I've probably already said all this, but I guess for me, just to close it out, it's like that part of the discussion, anyways. Like, yeah, I don't use terms like spiritual, like even if ways I think or ways I view things, other people might refer to. If other people want to call it spiritual, fine. Like, I really don't care. To me, it only gets annoying when you're trying to tell me that I should also see it as being spiritual, or I should see something as actually being God. It's like I said, if that's how you see it, that's helpful for you, fine. But just recognize that it's helpful for me to not view it that way. And in fact, I would say viewing it that way for me is very unhelpful. Um, so yeah, let me be, I guess. And if you want me to believe in something that you think of as like supernatural or whatever, like yeah, I'm going to ask a lot of questions like, okay, this is your perception of something. Okay, how do you know? Which that seems to be like in some of my experience kind of a dirty question to ask. Like people don't like, oh, again, going back to the whole, you're just basing it on your perception and like know and like knowledge and like that's all like flawed and everything. Okay, but then, well, if that's the case, then you're in the same boat as I am with the whole like flawed perceptions and knowledge limits. But yet you're telling me you know what you know, or you know what you saw or experienced, whatever. And like, okay, yeah, it's maybe I'm just getting old and crotchety about things, and things are bugging me more. I don't know. Like, who am I kidding? I've always been like this. So, well, anyway. Well, it sounds like we're like officially and unofficially on to second drink now. So, what's your second drink there, Matt? That you've apparently already been drinking.
The second verse, same as the first, a little bit faster, a little bit worse.
Mm,
So the Video Ranger Juice Force IPA, just like the first
mm.
one, but it's actually 9.5%. So yeah, I speed ran that first one.
Ooh. Let's see how the rest of this goes. So yeah, my second. So speaking of like closing out a certain case, like now getting into another one, I went back to the old Mad Tree, like their IPA variety, and also I guess sort of on theme for tonight, talking about the spiritual and supernatural thing. This is their Seeing Colors hazy IPA. So figure that's kind of like psychedelic-y, talking about like the weird shit seemed appropriate. So sure. Yeah. Also hazy, kind of juicy, but like not too much. Like the beer I was referring to earlier that I had over the weekend, this was like their juicy version of this. Like it's already pretty juicy on its own. But yeah, the one I had there, like it literally just tasted like, oh, this is fruit juice with a little hops added. And it was like, it wasn't bad. It was just, yeah, not what I was wanting. But this is good though. I think they hit it just right with the original. So yeah. So what are we talking about now?
Well, I just glanced. I was trying to find out what Kat Kerr is going to be leading, and I got sad because I didn't get what I was looking for. You ever get a haircut under the edge of your phone case?
Fucking hate that. Yeah.
All right, so the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias was just started, and according to the WhiteHouse.gov website, the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias is, there is hereby established within the Department of Justice the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, which you can't do because it's a thought crime, you dipshits.
And also, is it even a thing in the?
Yeah. There are more professing Christians in Congress. There's a higher percentage in Congress of professing Christians than there are a percentage of Christians in the country. Professing at that level. And so how can you be how can there be bias keeping your people down when you are literally more in charge than you should be?
Right. And here's the thing I like to point out. So people will I didn't
even get to the part that I'm sad about, but continue.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, did you want to continue?
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of like how many people in government are Christian, and because people of this persuasion will oftentimes point back to the election of Barack Obama and say well, look, we had a black president, therefore racism is over. Yet, literally every single president we have ever had has been a professing Christian of some sort. But
only one or two of them Catholic.
Yeah, I think two. Yeah, JFK and Biden. But yeah, all of them professing Christians. But somehow that means that Christians are so black people aren't being oppressed because we had one of them as president, but Christians are still being oppressed even though every single fucking president has been a Christian. Now,
we ended slavery, Tommy. I mean, we killed racism.
Yeah, and then we had and that's why Martin Luther King Jr. His whole thing wasn't about trying to still defeat racism. It was just that was just a victory lap. Isn't it great that we defeated racism? I'm just here to tell you how great it is, right? What are all these dogs doing?
How weak was the position of the U.S. government that they had to violently end somebody whose whole deal was nonviolent resistance?
Yep.
They couldn't nonviolently resist him, I guess. They had to go to violence.
Right.
We go nonviolent, people are going to think he's right. And they'll know he's right.
Right.
You can't win that shit.
Exactly. But speaking of the whole, as far as every president being a professing Christian, now, to me, the only possible response to that the Christians claiming persecution might have is oh, well, a lot of them, they may have claimed to be Christian, but they really weren't. They were just faking it. But to me, it's okay, but that makes my point even stronger, because that means that in this country, being a Christian is so privileged that even if a president wasn't actually Christian, they saw it advantageous to pretend that they were. Why would a non-Christian pretend to be a Christian if they were such an oppressed class? If they didn't have,
because they're so afraid of Christians, Tommy. Because Christians were bad and they didn't want to be tainted with. Wait, no, because then they.
Yeah, it just makes absolutely zero fucking sense. So
Well, that's what happens when you have a religion that's totally based in being the victim, and
right.
then that religion gets in complete control of a country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now
this
you
is
have a persecutor who thinks they're the persecuted.
right. Yeah, this is something I've
So they'll
talked
be
about
in fight
before.
or flight, but have like the full like ability of like the top dog persecutor.
Right. Yeah, it's like I'm in fight mode, but I'm the one with the nukes. But yeah, okay, this is something we mentioned on here before. Like I love reference back to Dr. Kip Davis, which I wish I could find just like whether it was like in short video clip or meme or something for him, because like the only times I've ever heard him talk about this was like in the middle of some like several hours long like live stream or interview or something. But so people don't know Dr. Kip Davis. Long story short, like Old Testament, like Hebrew biblical scholar. But dude knows a lot about the Bible to the point like he's one of the very few people in the world who have actually like worked with the original actual Dead Sea Scrolls. Like that's his level of knowing what the fuck he's talking about.
His beard
Um,
knows more than you do.
right? Um, but so yeah, look him up, Dr. Kip Davis. He's on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel, and he's been guests on several others like Apologia, Myth Vision, especially. Yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah, I think I'm going to change my screen name on YouTube to Kip Davis's beard, and then try to make some
yeah,
comments on Zadanza and see if I can get them to post it just because of my name.
that's a fantastic idea. I like that. Also, I also in my head canon like Kip is short for Kip word,
Uh-huh.
but so that's what. So you do Kip Davis's beard.
Kipward
I'll
Davis the
change.
third.
No, yeah, no, I'll just change mine to Kipward Davis, and we'll both comment. We'll see what they do.
See if we can get everybody to change their name in the chat to something Kip Davis related. And then he gets on there sometime because he does, and he's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, this is a big John Malkovich moment."
but anyway, so speaking of things that he speaks of, so he was talking about like the concept of like apocalyptic literature and how like so much of the Bible is apocalyptic literature, and what that is when there's a group of people who is being like very actively oppressed, but it's basically almost like them writing fan fiction. It's like, okay, well, these
Yeah,
people are oppressing us now, but like, here's what it's going to be like when God shows up to vindicate us and like kicks all their asses and ends the world and everything for some reason, because apparently that's the thing that has to happen as a part of this. But
because Jesus was lame. We need
yeah,
badass Jesus.
yeah,
We need
right.
revenge
So
Jesus to come back.
yeah, but like,
Revengelations, they should have called Revelations.
exactly. But like what you were saying, how it's like the people in power thinking they're being persecuted. Well, that's because like much of like the Christian literature, aka the Bible, is this apocalyptic literature, which is the literature of the oppressed. But the problem is now you have all this like writings of people being oppressed in the hands of the people who are basically now doing the oppressing.
Yeah, we stopped identifying with the oppressed and identified as the oppressed. That was gold. I like that for me.
Ooh, that was good. Yeah. Somebody clip that, please. But because, and this is something I like to point out, because like look at who, like all these people with this, all these Christians with this persecution complex, like here in the U.S. Because when they talk about the people who are like who in their minds are oppressing and like ruining America, like look at who they're talking about. They're talking about like the LGBTQ plus community,
Who are literally like a group that has no hope of having power. Like
right?
they're just
Like
there will never be enough of them.
yeah,
It's
or like feminists, aka just like women wanted to be treated well,
Women are
racial
equal. Oh no.
minorities.
Yeah.
What's that?
Women wanting to
Yeah.
be equal. That's anti-biblical.
Well, good. Then
True.
fuck the
It
Bible.
is.
Right? So, but all these people, all these groups that they are
But you
claiming
know
as
what's
being the
biblical?
oppressor.
Leprosy. Let's just. Apparently, some people need to have leprosy and live outside the city gate. Like,
Honestly, I wouldn't
we
mind
don't
living
have enough
outside the city gate
lepers.
at this point.
We need to get people leprosy and put them in, like, hand-me-down tents outside of Cincinnati. And
Yeah. But anyway, so look at all these groups that the people in power who are identifying with this apocalyptic literature of the who is supposed to be of the oppressed. Look at who they're saying are the oppressors, and they're all groups. Like none of them are in power. Like all of them are actually themselves oppressed groups, because being the ones in power, like that's the only people they have left to go after. And yeah, and it's one of those things. Like yeah, once like Kip was talking about that, and it was like a very like eye opening.
I think
One
I
might
saw the
say
same thing. Yeah.
yeah, one might say apocalyptic experience, like in the truest sense of the word. It's
It's
like,
super dark. That
yeah, but I know I meant like apocalyptic in the like an unveiling, like seeing like a new truth, like oh, this changes everything, like
oh
kind
yeah,
of
but
like
I mean, I was commenting on
yeah,
the oppressor feeling like the
but
oppressed.
yes, also very true. Yes, that is very
That's
dark,
also how Nazis happened.
right? Yeah, so now in the interests of making what
Wait,
I
so the
typed,
Jewish people they're like, Jewish people are a threat, and Jewish people are like, I know we're better at math than you, but how? How do you figure? we are in the minority. Uh,
right. All right. So in the interest of making the episode description that I typed up more accurate, um, tying the whole like climate of people in power very much favoring like the Christianity, but then tying that back into like the utility of using terms like being spiritual or calling God different things. This was something like as we were texting earlier today, like Matt brought up, but then as we were actually like once we jumped on like before the show, as we were talking about it, like I don't know, do you remember what you were saying or where you were going with that, or
like
was
the
that
usefulness of
it's like it's got carpet on the brain or
spiritual. Oh, I
sorry?
ripped out so much carpet today and so
Yeah.
many fucking staples. My old man cyst on my wrist popped out. I have like
Oh,
what's it called? It's not bursitis. What's it called? Fluidy cyst, when you do too much of one thing and your joint says, it's just fluid, and just and it just puts it somewhere. It's supposed to stay in the joint.
It's like that's a direct quote, by the way.
Yeah, it's like this is joint fluid. It's supposed to stay in your joint. But then, like, you get older
It's in
and
the name.
you have the genetics for it, then your joint, for me, I had my hand like this against the floor for hours today doing staples. And so it squeezed joint fluid out in a sack. And when I first got it, it freaked me out. But I had this trick where I pull on my thumb and push on the joint and then push it back in. And yeah, it makes me feel like I am almost 50 because I am.
That makes
I'm going to
sense.
be 47 this year.
Ooh.
The same number as the current president. But yeah, so that was. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, carpet on the brain? Yeah.
So going back to like the connection you were making with the whole like labeling things as spiritual, like current political climate.
So
yeah.
So there's this group Uh, I heard today there about the task force on the right to eradicate anti-Christian bias. That's just
Yeah,
a fucking fantasy. And
right.
then Kat Kerr, who is not a mentally well person, no shade, but like also like maybe don't look to her for insight on the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm like fully admittedly like mentally not well, but like I'm also not trying to like be in charge of anything in the government either.
Well, she's
So
going to be like special advisor to,
yeah,
I don't know, for on Christian things in the White House or something. It's just nuts. And so with that anti-Christian task force, no, task force against anti-Christian. I was thinking criticizing or critiquing Christians um, from like an outsider's perspective is anti-Christian bias. uh, and so
yeah,
that would be potentially get the force of the task force on us.
yeah,
And so then I was thinking, okay, how do you then in that climate speak about things in a way that doesn't draw scrutiny? You would have to talk about it without using those words. So then those words wouldn't be useful anymore. Or if you were like, "Oh, I'm a progressive Christian again," and then and then you critique, but you critique using the Bible, and so then you're going the iron sharpening iron route, which is not a great way to sharpen iron. Let's be honest. Um, I mean, harder stone sharpens iron.
yeah. There you
Iron versus iron. I think you're having a sword fight. I don't think you're sharpening things, and that dulls up that fucking blade. Uh,
go. Yeah, but are you
um,
Matt? Are you saying the Bible's wrong?
no, I'm saying it's useful for some things and not others. Uh, like it's useful for saying reality can be like this sometimes, but it's not useful for saying reality is this all the
Hmm.
time.
Yep.
Even when it contradicts, it's still the same. like, all right, but listen to all these people that are on this thing. This is what may be said. All right.
Yay.
So the attorney general shall serve as the chair of the task force. I'm already scared. Um, in addition to the chair, the task force shall consist of the following other members, and it is a who's who of Tom Dickory. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Defense. That's spooky as shit. The Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Secretary of Homeland Security, the Secretary of the Office of the Management of Budget, Representative of the United States of America to the United Nations, the Administrator of the Small Business Administration, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, the Administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the heads of such other executive departments, agencies, and offices that the chair may, from time to time, invite to participate. That's the full force of the fucking federal government against people who are
Yeah.
anti-Christian in their bias. Like that's Nazis didn't do this shit. This is a
Right.
one up on the Nazis. Secretary of
Yeah.
Defense.
Yeah. And if you've seen like so I need to give a shout out to uh YouTube channel, the Friendly Atheist, Hemant Mehta, friend of the show, whether he knows it or not. Um, he did a great video on this recently, like talking about this task force and like laying out like what like the Trump administration is saying is like the anti-Christian bias in the government. And he went through it like point by point, like and everything they're saying. This is the bias. He's like, yeah, point by point. He's like, all of this is bullshit. Like none of the things they're going after are real.
No,
like,
they're living in a fantasy reality. Like
Yeah.
the stuff Elon Musk. Did you see that the clips or watch any of that press conference that Trump gave
No.
with Elon? There's a 5 minute video, and I want to send you that like explains the philosophy behind what Musk is doing. But like Trump is sitting. Picture this. But first of all, think of the analogy of Trump as the emperor and Elon Musk as Darth Vader. So
Yep.
Donald Trump, they're zoomed in on Donald Trump at the Resolute desk. Trump is, that's how the interview starts. They're in the Oval Office, and he's like, blah, 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 I'm president. Isn't everything neat and fun now? And then they like zoom out, and he was just kind of like, here's Elon, and and there's Elon dressed in almost all black, wearing a black Make America Great Again hat, all blacked out. Like even the text is black. And because he referred to himself in the past as Dark Mega, which is like sinister and lame as fuck at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
And then he and his 5-year-old son is there too, whose name is X. And at this point, I am convinced that this is Elon's successor. Like, and that's why X is always there. He's been there in like interviews every time lately. So he's either a human shield for questions, or he has like special significance for Musk's dynasty. That's where my thinking is right now. So Musk rambles on about like literally things that aren't happening, and how like Doge it is the most transparent like endeavor in whatever, and it's like in such horseshit. But here's the thing: I think he believes, like, one, he's very self-centered, and so like he says he's being as transparent as he can be, and I think that's true, and I think he believes that, and I think it's because if he was more transparent, he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing, because more people would wake up and get that fucker out of there. He should be in jail. Like,
right.
Literally stepping into some of the rooms he's been in, jail. Like, he's looking at top secret information. That's because that's the federal treasury, and he has no clearance to do so. Like, I'm pretty sure they shoot you. Like, they're like, you're not supposed to be in this room. Get the fuck out. And like, if he's like, what? And then they shoot you. Because they're not fucking around with that shit. Like 8 billion, it was like billions of transactions happen a year, like microtransactions and big ones. Oh my gosh, it's like worst case scenario, or we're on the way to the worst case scenario. It kind of depends what it is. So I think I think what Musk believes is true is different than reality, but he firmly believes it's true. Like, he firmly believes that like low income people don't need as many services as they're getting, because he has had no real contact with low income people, and has always been stupid fucking rich his whole life. And so he's like, surely there must be fraud and abuse, because there's no way low income people need this much help.
Right.
And the same with Christians. I think the algorithms that we've built, the algorithms that the like robber barons and the oligarchs have created, to make as much money as possible by giving people what they want to see. It's created like a pocket dimension in the brains of very conservative people and like conservative Christians and people like Elon Musk. And so like they've been shown only what they want to see for so long, and didn't realize it, that they think what they wanted to see. They just had their view of reality validated over and over again for years in their like social media feeds and their YouTube feed, um, and they're like self-selecting for certain information, like only looking for sources that they would agree with.
Mm-hmm.
That there's this fantasy world, this fantasy version, or in the case of Christians or in Elon Musk, it's like some like dystopian non-reality that they're combating.
Mm-hmm.
But based on how many people are in this committee of power or this task force, that feels like that person knows what's true. And they're like, well, let's build a task force to crush everyone. Like there seems to be like they're more in touch with what's really happening than just trying to create a theocracy. So I think like they're like Russell Vogt or whatever the fuck his name is, who's now in charge of the Office of Management and Budget.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote 2020 Project 2025.
Yeah.
I watched an interview. Somebody got it. They misrepresented themselves and got an in-person interview with him, and they were actually journalists. And this is a guy who really knows what reality is. He doesn't give a shit. He wants it to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And he is straight up trying to. Somebody finally pointed out in an interview I was watching recently. They're like, what we're watching happen now is people who watched like science fiction and Marvel movies and thought the bad guys were the good guys. And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Pretty much. It's a good way to put it.
They saw a Handmaid's Tale, and they're like, yeah, they're getting a bad rap, those guys. Raping all those women to have more kids because they can't get it up, and somebody got to blame. Yeah. It's
fuck. Yeah.
That's what the handmaids were for. Like, basically, what it ends up being in that story is that like there's a problem, a genetic problem that's happening, where like a lot more men are shooting blanks, and so they have these handmaids that are supposed to like save the race or something, and so if you're rich enough to qualify for a handmaid, then you just rape them to try to get them pregnant. But the problem is that like if they don't get pregnant, then they kind of get shot or something because they're like, it's your fault that you're not getting pregnant, and so nobody wants them as a handmaid, so they just kind of get executed. And it's a great series. I need to finish it. It was just getting too real, man.
Yeah.
Because I was seeing like the look on the dudes' faces in that show. I saw the same looks on people in real life, like dudes in real life. Project 2025 people.
Yeah.
And what's his dick, Johnson, who's in charge of the house?
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
And I was like, oh man. That's the face of a man who fucked a nanny against her will. Like that. I'm not trying to be funny.
No, yeah, that's. I get you. Yeah.
And blamed her.
Well, because of course, yeah. So yeah, I guess to kind of bring it back to like things we were talking about earlier. So I mean, like for real, like in this climate, like are you having concerns for like us like on this show?
Not yet. Um,
But speaking of, now we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Like, it seems like the majority of our interaction and like everything like comes through Facebook. But I don't know if you saw. I guess recently, Facebook or Meta, like this also includes like Instagram and like their other stuff. Apparently, recently updated their terms, so now it's no longer against their like policies or like whatever to for people to refer to like transgenderism and stuff like as a mental illness. Where before, like if you would like say that, it's like, oh, that violates like terms of whatever.
yep.
But I guess no longer.
Yeah, these were
So,
stipulations given to the Google CEO by the Trump administration. They're like, we'll help you make as much money as we can possibly help you to do, but here's what you got to do for us.
oh, talking about Google or Meta?
Wait, you said
Or both?
Meta? I thought you were talking about YouTube. Sorry,
No,
missed
I
that part.
said yeah, Meta, like on Facebook. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah. There's the Google stuff too. Like I saw like on Google Calendar, like if you have Google Calendar, like it no longer marks like Black History Month or
Oh my
Pride
god.
Month. So yeah,
The robber barons are back, man. Owen's learning about the 1820, starting in 1820 with the Industrial Revolution and Manifest Destiny and James Madison and all that.
Yeah. Owen being your son.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back in that.
Yeah.
And that is the time period that Trump has said that he idolizes. Like that's what he thinks. Like that's when we were the richest. It's like, no. That's when 4 guys were the richest.
And you just want to be one of those 4. That's basically what this is.
So there's Crystal Ball, which is an awesome name. She is an independent journalist, and she has a theory that there was a promise made. This is her hypothesis, and it does seem to make a lot of sense out of Trump's behavior and Elon's behavior and all that. That Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and like these tech robber baron people came to Trump and gave him a promise or something, made a deal with him similar to this, where they said, we'll help you get as rich as us. And you need to let one of us kind of be the shadow president. So you need to let basically Musk be the CEO and you be the kind of chairman of the board. And that's the dynamic you saw like on display during that like press conference. And it fits into this whole, I can't remember the guy's name. He's like a guru to the tech oligarchs, and he has this philosophy. He's like really a C+ student, but he thinks he's amazing, and or he thinks he's Dunning-Kruger effect, really. And so his idea of how things should play out is what the plan is with Musk. It's like I'll send you a video. There's a 5-minute video that like goes into the teachings of this guy and how the takeover by Musk of these different agencies and gutting these different regulatory agencies, and it's kind of to create a like a techno-feudalism kind of society where you have the different tech oligarchs and they control their own fiefdoms. One of the reasons why Trump wants to get Greenland is because Peter Thiel has been wanting a place where he can build his perfect society called Praxis. Super on the nose. He's like, I have ideas. I want to put them into practice in a real place. I'm going to call it praxis, because that's exactly what that is. There's like no nuance there. It's simple as hell.
There you go.
You're super smart. I want to work for you and live on the land that you own, and then you kind of own me in a way because like I'm living on your property free of charge, and you like give me things.
Right.
And my brain just went down like 3 rabbit holes at once.
Yeah.
So it is our dystopia, and they think they're building the utopia. It's also what the Bible says weirdly is dystopic, and antichristy.
Fascinating. Well, it's like I want to end on a more positive note, but I don't know where to go from here.
But no, I don't think we're in danger yet. They've got their head so far up their own ass. I don't know how they're going to see anything else and go after people.
Yeah, that's like my only hope, I guess, for this administration is that they're just going to be so bad and just so incompetent and just like way overplay their hand that people are actually going to see it for what it is. Because like I know there's always going to be that crowd that like no matter what he does, like because like I see it like all over, like in my Facebook feed, like the people like, yeah, I know what like Musk and all them are doing, like government, and it's great. It's like
I just want to be like,
yeah,
it's literally illegal for him to be anywhere near the information he's been near. He should be in jail. It's unconstitutional, literally illegal. Like, you want to find fraud? Fine, not that guy.
Yeah.
Also, there was literally a whole department of the federal government that was in charge of that shit. You know what they did? He started his own dirge thing, and then they disbanded the group, the branch that like evaluated all this stuff. And he says he's found all kinds of fraud and waste. Has given all he's done is said there's been fraud and waste. He's given no evidence, and people are running with it like he said there was fraud and waste, and he's super smart and has rockets into space, and like,
and it rhymes.
And then you're like, but did he give any evidence? No, but I trust him. Like, I'm like, why? He should literally be in jail for being in the same room as his information, let alone seeing it. Like,
yeah, because like I try to use the analogy because like this is something like I guess people try in vain, like when it comes to politics, when they say, well, imagine the other person that you don't like doing this. It's like, but like so like I try, okay, so imagine like if Harris had won and then she was like letting Bill Gates in, like, and all this stuff. Like, could you imagine like the shitstorm that like conservatives would be like starting up over that? It's like, oh, but because it's their guy, then they, I mean, yeah, they don't give a shit. So, because that's the thing. Like that, like for me, like I said, has been like so disheartening about all this because like there's so many times where whether it's like on social media or whatever, I just want to say like look, this is like objectively what they're doing, and like we should all be opposed to this. But then I'll see other people posting like, yeah, I know this is what they're doing, and isn't that great? And like, there's just so it's like there's
it's like for some people fraud and waste. Why don't you like to find fraud and waste? It's like, okay, back up.
Yeah, so and the part like, and I'm related to some of these people, but
people are starting to wake up. I saw a video about the farmers across the country are starting to wake up because when funding for federal programs got frozen,
yeah,
there were contracts ahead with the federal government where they made improvements to their farms, and the federal government, there was a contract where they're like, if you do these things, the federal government will pay you this money, basically reimburse them. and um, it was like things that are better for society, but they didn't have any kind of capitalistic reasons to make those changes. Some of it
Mhm.
was environmental, some of it was other stuff. But because everything was frozen, they got a notice that like their contracts were being canceled. And so they had done all this stuff. And this one farmer was like, I'm I'm out at least $80,000. Like I will lose the farm. Uh, and and
Yeah.
he's like, there are a lot of other people like me, and a lot. And he said he was a Trump voter. So some people on the left were like, what did you think you were gonna get? Like you
Right.
kind of did this to yourself. He literally said he was gonna end everything Biden did, which was the IRA. I forget what that stood for. No, Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay. Like I say, Irish Republican Army. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate acronym.
Yeah. A bit.
But he
But
did say that he he put out another thing where again, I heard about this through the Humanist Report, where people on the left had been contacting him. Some people were like angry, and he was initially defensive about that. Some people were more understanding. Um, but he went on to say that like people are listening to you now. Like we're realizing that you were probably right, or at least we're willing to listen to you in ways that we weren't interested before. And he said that he's been contacted by people in the LGBTQ community, um, and he's like I didn't have any interaction with people in that community before, and he's like I'm listening to your stories, and he was like I didn't before. He's like I was wrong to do that, and he's like I want to hear where you're coming from. He's like I want to hear why you have come to different conclusions than me, and he's like yeah, and it took. He's like when it didn't affect me, he's like I didn't look into it. Now that it's affected me, uh, I am. And he's like, that was wrong of me to do that. Uh, his name's
oh, that's
Skyler.
cool.
uh,
Right.
I want to start a hashtag Skyler. Skyler's right. Um,
There you go.
so like, there's a lot of people waking up. Um, according to scientific research about what it takes to end authoritarian regimes or leadership structures, it is 3.5% of the population turning out to protest.
Mm.
And that is more effective than violent resistance. So 3.5% of the population non-violently protesting. Um, Now, non-violent could include some property destruction by like more radical elements, but
Right.
uh, so that's 11 million people in the United States. And until
Okay.
we get to that number, it's very unlikely that anything will permanently change. Like that's what it takes to kill an autocracy.
Okay.
Um, I think we'll get there sooner than in the past because of the internet and people just getting information so quickly. And
Right. Yeah.
once
For
the
sure.
algorithm knows you want more information of a certain kind, fire hose.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it works well. Yeah.
There is
Uh,
a protest coming up. Shit. I don't remember if it's on the 18th or the 19th. Nationwide protest at Tesla dealerships to protest Elon Musk and what he's doing and to get him out of the federal government. Which sounds silly to do it at Tesla dealerships, but really, so he's like the
yeah.
chairman of the board of Tesla,
Yeah.
and like their stock prices has cratered,
Mm-hmm.
like 75% or something.
Yep.
So that much bad press and that much bad attention, they're going to cut him off because they can fire him, and then all he has is his stock.
Yep.
They can remove him from the board. And so it's just a tangible way to put pressure on him personally because Congress isn't doing it yet.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna do? We don't have any leverage. They're the presidency and the House and the Senate, and what are we gonna do? Just like, I don't know. Maybe in March you just refuse to pass a budget, like until your demands are met. Totally legal, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Shut everything they're doing down, and then and make the Trump administration defy that and say, "Nah, we're gonna keep it going." Just make it. They're already doing that kind of shit, but like,
Mm-hmm.
make them do it for everything. Make it super obvious, and like,
Yeah.
those people see that they just turned the government back on, like all of it. Not just a program here or there. Like, make them like out them as make them do the thing they're going to do earlier. Change the timetable. That's
There
a
you go.
power move, and people do that in like war all the time. Like,
Yeah.
if a battle is coming, start the battle before your enemy's ready. Like, if there's no way to avoid it,
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, I'm feeling my brain ending its like usefulness in any kind of conversation. So whether anyone else cares about this or not, I feel like I need to pay off on a tease I made a couple hours ago about the Elden Ring DLC and my issues with it. So indulge me here for a minute. This is like, I know viewers of the show may not be used to this, but I'm about to make like an extreme, like hard left turn from where we were at to something completely unrelated.
pull that
So
emergency brake and
yeah.
cut the wheel.
So unless there was anything else you had, like as far as like wrapping up thoughts and any of that, I want to make sure you got all like your full piece said or whatever it is.
Oh, by the way, the protest coming up later in February is for
Yes.
It's in support of federal workers
Oh, cool.
because they're getting the big
Mm-hmm.
they're getting the big Cheeto dildo.
Yeah, this is just a regular Cheeto. It's a Cheeto puff.
Well, and in support of government assistance too. Like, that's why I'm going because my family needs
Yeah.
that, and my daughter's
Yeah.
entitled to it. And
Right?
and how fucking dare you?
Yeah, which yeah.
Like, is it illegal to take a dump in the driveway at Tesla?
One way to find out, I guess.
That'll really divide the crowd. I'd be like, "Where's my anarchist?"
Anarcho-fecalists? Is that a thing? Yeah.
And they just throw poo. They just throw poo at the fascists.
I approve. That's all I can say.
Why haven't they done that? That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I guess the trick is, like, how do you get the feces over there without getting it on you?
I mean, it's a delicate balance, that's for sure.
I mean, if you can take a shit in the Capitol building and then get pardoned,
or worse than that, yeah. So anyway, so I know there's no easy transition from like taking a shit at Tesla and Elden Ring's like Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, but I'm going to make it anyway.
Well, you got to find joy.
Right. So, how I was finally able to beat Promised Consort Radahn. Like, maybe one of the maybe the most difficult boss that From Software has ever developed, and thereby maybe one of the most difficult bosses in video game history, because that's how they roll. Like, so I was saying, like, in the DLC, there's different things you can collect around the world that like up your like resistances and attack power, because the DLC just as a baseline is more difficult than the rest of the base game. So, but here's my issue with like how obscure so many things in the DLC are. Like, this is something that like I was talking with Matt with over the weekend. Like, so just by way of reference, so pretend my hand here is the map of the DLC. So there's this area, probably like
The DLC is
about
Michigan.
roughly. It's about as shitty. So there's this like castle, like fortress area up here, and there's a part where I'm looking like, and it has this like this big central room with like 6 floors, all these like balconies, and there's like, okay, I'm looking at this place like like it's like maybe like in video game feet, it's like okay, 20 feet away, like I can see it right there, but like I don't see a way to get to it. And you're thinking, oh, in this building, like there's all these ways you can pull levers and like secret walls and like shifts this like central column you can like climb over, like reveals different areas. Like, oh, so I just got to find somewhere else in the building to like reveal this secret area, because I can see stuff over there. There's stuff there I want to get, things I want to fight, all that. Like, no, apparently the way you get to like 20 feet away in this one building in here is to go to a completely different area of the map all the way the fuck down here. Find a hole in the ground, not the first hole in the ground you find, because that one's actually
That's
inaccessible.
just to get your attention about holes in the ground.
Right, but then like next to that, there's like another building that has its own hole that you go down and then like climb its way up. So, but as far as like the things you can gather to like increase like your strength and like whatever, that eventually like made the final boss a little easier for me, and like a couple other strategies I found and like made it doable. But like there's these things, like things you can collect around the world, but like most of them, I think there's like a total of like 30 of them or so. Like most of them are like in very like significant areas. Like, okay, I've reached this like very like important point. There's this like landmark thing, and okay, now the thing is here that I can collect and like make myself more powerful. So like that's what I'm looking for. But then I'd like look up like, okay, well, where the fuck are the rest of these things? Because I know there's more. Well, apparently, like, because also all throughout the place, there's just random, like, kind of like shadow, like ghosty looking enemies. We're like, oh, well, some of them, like, if you kill them, they drop this thing. It's like, okay, that's like random, but it's like, oh, but it's only the ones that are like carrying like a pot over their head or something. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, so that's still like pretty like dumb and obscure. Like, is how the fuck would you know that like this random enemy that's everywhere, like some of them are carrying it? Oh, so I was like, oh, so anyone I see that is like carrying a pot, or it's like, no, not even that, like not even all the ones that are carrying the pot drop this thing. It's just like a few of them. I was like, ugh. So that's my rant about like Shadow of the Erdtree, and just how like even for like this, like for people who know, like the people who made Elden Ring and like the Dark Souls series and Bloodborne and Sekiro and Demon's Souls, like they're known for like for being like difficult, like hard games with like just. But even like this seems even like for their standards, like for me, this was just like a bit over the top. But anyway, I finally got through it, beat the final boss, and so.
Well, speaking
Yeah.
of milestones, I got my stuff.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask about that. So yeah, that finally came in the mail. So
Yeah. Got it right here.
awesome.
It's really just secular humanism with more flair.
Oh yeah, with more aesthetics, or as I like to say, like yeah, Satanism is basically secular humanism for people who like wearing capes.
Yeah.
So
That card was pretty cool too.
mm-hmm.
That's pretty well done.
Yeah.
I liked that it came from the Salem Art Gallery. Like that's who fulfilled it. Because I know it's in Salem. So I did a 3-month internship, and I lived in Salem during that time. And I wasn't real familiar with the street that their location is on, like their main office.
Mm-hmm.
I drove down the parallel street to that. That part of Salem just wasn't very interesting. Like in general, Salem is kind of like witchy land at Epcot Center.
Yeah.
people come there on their vacations or when they're in town to like go to like look where the witches are buried in the cemetery, and
Yep.
you can get all kinds of like chicken's feet.
Yeah. You're muted. Do you know you're muted? There, I just unmuted you. So
Yeah, I didn't do shit. That happened on its own.
Hmm.
I lived in the Hispanic part of town. I was like the only white guy in the building. There's a drunk guy with a Spanish accent who always asked me for random amounts of change, like 37 cents, who would sit on my stoop and smell like suntan lotion. You need 37 cents? And I'm like, no. He's like, what about 65? You're going up, man. Like, no, I'm like, could you move? I can't open the door. And he's like, what? And he's like, hey, you have $1. He was so drunk he didn't remember what just happened. Like, fucking move.
That's a fun place to be sometimes. Yeah.
Mariachi techno's a thing. I found that out there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess so. Congratulations for also technically being a Satanist. No, I guess this may be conversation for another time. But do you consider yourself a Satanist, or are you just like, I enjoyed giving them money to help them out with their things?
I don't know. A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I like all of the things they stand for. The mobile abortion clinic. It's not really a mobile abortion clinic. It's like, I don't think it is. I think it's too small for that. I think they deliver contraceptives and like birth control and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like mobile Planned Parenthood for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and like, and they also have like their like, you know, secular alternative to like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I hesitate to say that I am because of how that sounds to some people.
Yeah.
Also, nothing they stand for do I disagree with.
Right. Yeah. The way I like to put it is like to kind of play on like recent statements by like, you know, like from Richard Dawkins or the like conversion, whatever, of Ayaan Hirsi Ali from atheism to Christianity. Like they'll say like, and like Dawkins referred to himself as like a cultural Christian, saying like, well, I don't actually, obviously I don't believe in all the tenets or whatever, but I appreciate Christianity as a cultural force, like against like what he calls like, you know, wokeism or whatever, which like that's its own topic, whatever. But so then I look at, well, that's kind of similar, like basically like similar reasons to why I, you know, joined the Satanic Temple, you know, technically, and like got my certificate and everything. So I refer to myself as a cultural Satanist. So the way people say they're a cultural Christian or whatever, I'm like, yeah. So like I said, I believe in what they're doing. I want to support like their efforts, particularly in the like church state separation, like activism type of stuff. And yeah, and like, and also like as a decades long fan of black metal, you know, I appreciate the aesthetic and all that. So yeah, but it was funny. Like when I got my certificate, like I made a point to actually like explain it to my kids, because I know, like, you know, they still consider themselves Christian. Like they're very like open-minded about stuff. Like they know I'm an atheist and like they're completely cool with that. And especially like my daughter now, like she's enjoying like having conversations with me, like getting my thoughts on different things about like whether it's like religion, ethics, morality, general stuff. So that's been like really cool for our relationship to have conversations like that. But it's like when I got my certificate, like I wanted to tell them, it's like one of those things, like I didn't want them like seeing it like without me telling them and them to start having all these assumptions or whatever. But I guess apparently when I was like trying to explain it to my daughter, I was like, shocker, I was apparently coming off like super awkward and weird because like just judging by her facial expression the whole time, she was like, okay.
That reminds me of when I told Owen, or Aaron and I told Owen that I use medical marijuana, even though it's like I don't have my card and I get it illegally. But no, legally it depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's illegal, sometimes it's not. But like his response was to do like a touchdown thing. He was like, "Woo, drugs!" That's literally what he said. He said, "Woo, drugs."
That's fantastic. Oh, but speaking of like, so my favorite reaction, like, so when I told my son, who's about your son's age, he's like a little older, but not much, but yeah. So when I was telling him, like, and I remember telling him, like, I just want, because like I don't know what you think of like Satanism or all that, like, so I just want to let you know, like, because I didn't want you to just like see this sometime, like, oh, Dad's a Satan worshiper, and he's going to be starting like, you know, sacrifice goats in the backyard or whatever. Or so yeah, I just love like his reaction is like, oh yeah, it's like that'd be a fun Tuesday. It's like, but yeah. So yeah, so I guess we're both kind of Satanists now, or part of the Satanic Temple at least. But so yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Salem's
All right,
a good
well,
town. They picked a perfect spot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like nobody there gives a shit. Like everybody who cared left. Like,
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think my brain's getting near the end of its usefulness for any sort of whatever we're doing.
yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
got a message that like Owen had a rough interaction with the teacher. So, also, something I didn't talk about yet was I found. So I discovered Deconstructing Mormon YouTube.
Ooh.
There's a show called Zelf on the Shelf.
Self. Okay.
Zelf, yeah, which apparently is a Native American in the Book of Mormon. He had an arrow in his ribs from battle or some shit. I just looked it up. But like, Mormon atheists are weird. I see a lot of overlap with how we talk about things, but at the same time, so there's a thing like Mormons have a lot of childlike characteristics. Like if they've been Mormon for a while, they just like don't grow up. They kind of stay kids. There's like that kind of naivete that's required for the faith. That's a little different than Christianity.
Interesting.
And watching their show pointed out some things about our show that I'm like, oh, it's kind of like us, but like it's gross when they do it. Is it gross when we do it?
Okay.
There's like what like one of them is openly gay now, and the other one shows her midriff and like I guess has like premarital sex or something, and they're like, we're edgy now, and they both cuss, but like they're still very Mormon. I don't know what to do with it. But I'm subscribed and now I'm watching.
There you go. What's it called?
Zelf, ZELPH, on the shelf.
Zelf on the shelf. Gotcha.
Which for Mormons is super edgy and insulting, is what I'm gathering.
All right, I dig it, I guess. So.
Yeah, and the gay guy has like earrings, like he's gay in the 80s. I mean, go him. But like,
right.
I don't know. Maybe gay Mormons time travel.
Ooh, now there's a series I would watch.
And I'm done.
All right.
Their show is endearing and uncomfortable.
Cool. That's like us. I feel like we're endearing and uncomfortable. So
I mean, I'm uncomfortable most of the time.
Yeah, it comes with the territory and the tism. Yeah, all right. So All right. Well, like I said, I'm feeling done for tonight. But before we go, exciting kind of announcement to make
Mm-mm.
that just happened while we were streaming a
Tommy's
while
pregnant.
ago. Well, no, actually, but excited to announce we don't have a specific date nailed down yet, but future guest for the show
Oh.
sometime in March, the one and only Mr. Kyle Butler has
All
agreed
right.
to join us on the show. I don't know how familiar you are with him, Matt, but like he's
Not
someone
very.
someone I've been following for a while. Like I think I probably first knew about him through our buddy Derek Day. He's had a conversation with. I've been following on the Facebook and Instagram, and when I had TikTok. But yeah, really cool guy. Like former Christian. Like I don't know what he considers himself as far as like atheist or not, or spiritual or not. So that'll be part of the fun of the conversation. It's just he's just someone like for a while now I've just been really wanting to like talk to and get to know better. So yeah. So he says, like I said, no specific date. He said probably sometime in March would work for him. So yeah.
I'll be
So-
around sometime in March.
Hey, me too. Cool. We should do a show with him sometime. But yeah. So yeah, be looking forward to more news on that. I'm excited. But yeah. Anyway,
I'll have to
So,
know
yeah.
enough to be excited before then.
there you go. Yeah. So Matt and anyone else watching, yeah, look up Kyle Butler on the Facebook, the Instagram. Like I probably still on TikTok. I don't know what he did with that whole TikTok's gone. Now it's kind of not. I still have no idea what's going on with that.
No,
But anyway, look up.
It's back and it's helping in the counter revolution right now.
Oh, good. Maybe I should get it again. Anyway, so yeah, Mr. Kyle Butler, looking forward to that.
I just added him as a friend.
Oh, sweet. He'll probably appreciate that. He seems like he's a good people. Also, like yourself, works as a handyman. So,
There you go.
Yeah.
They let a black guy do handyman work? My goodness.
But, well, you can ask him about that when he's on. But I think I forget
No,
where
I
he's.
am a little
where he-
interested to see because some people like they're not because like if a white guy walks in with tools, they're like, oh, he's here to fix things. But if a black man walks in with tools, they're like, oh, he's got weapons. Like, does that ever happen, or people are just nervous? That's what
Yeah,
I
well-
kind of want to know that.
If I remember correctly, I think he's in New Jersey. I don't know
Right,
what
so-
part.
Probably not many racists in Jersey. I mean, not openly anyway.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't know much about New Jersey, but like off the top of my head, it seems like a place where there probably aren't a lot of racists. But if you are racist in New Jersey, you're probably like super racist. But I don't know.
Yeah, it seems very Yankee. You know, not Confederacy at all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's one of many things we can ask him about, maybe, or we can just like let that one lie. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, looking forward to having Kyle on here next month. Until then, like I said, definitely like plenty of other guests we'd love to have on, including pretty much all of our former guests. Like Tiffany Kane has expressed interest in being on again, doing a show about the concept of forgiveness. Probably that's something we can maybe do soon. I'll reach out to her. Also, speaking of Tiffany, like she's working on some new music for her band Rackets and Drapes. I've heard a couple of like rough mixes and stuff she's working on. Like sounds really cool. I'm excited
Nice.
for some new music from them. But yeah, other than that, we'll be back here again next week, talking about something probably, but I guess we'll see. All right. Well, any other closing parting thoughts from you, Matt? Or
May your things and stuff be forever with your people.
well, if you insist. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, whether it's now or later, and we will see you back next week. And again, look for more news on appearance from Mr. Kyle Butler. Very excited, and you should be too. Damn it. All right. Good night.